CD7.
Jake put the phone down, let out a deep sigh, and rubbed his hands across his face. "What's happened?" Emily said. "Is it the baby?" "Barbara's experiencing some bleeding. They've flown her to Adelaide. They've just arrived. She's being assessed." "Oh, God, poor Barbara. And David. They must be terrified. What can we do?" "I'm going to carry on as planned with the seeding. David's going to phone Bob Stanley in the morning and see if he can do a couple of night shifts. Poor fellow, you could hear how torn he was. He needs to get the crop in or else he'll lose a year's income, but he can't leave Barbara." "No, that he absolutely cannot do," Emily said emphatically. "And she said she was feeling so much better today too." Emily added sadly, "She was even affectionately talking to her bump." "Yeah. Hopefully it's just a false alarm and everything will be okay."
Hey, what about Sasha?"
Emily asked. "He didn't mention her. I'll pop by on my way out to the paddock first thing and check she's got food and water. I'm sure David will know more in the morning. If they're going to be away for more than a few days, we'll bring her over here. But let's hope it won't come to that. Fingers crossed it's just a false alarm." They lay there in each other's arms, knowing they should get some sleep and that it would be nearly impossible now. Poor Barbara, Emily thought. Why does such a kind, loving person, someone who would be the best mother in the world, have to go through this? It just isn't fair. "Come on," Jake said. "We should try to rest. They're going to be relying on us and we need to be on top of our game." Emily agreed. But she was thinking, you maybe. I'm just going to be uselessly sitting around. What can I do to help? She rolled over and Jake spooned in behind her. She concentrated on saying the mantra, "Please let everything be okay for all of them," over and over in the hope sleep would come. Just when everything was going so well. Chapter 29. They woke with the grey of early morning peeping through the tiny gaps in the bedroom curtains. Jake gave Emily a quick peck on the lips and said good morning before getting slowly out of bed. The mood was sombre, as gloomy as the day outside. It was a far cry from 3 days ago when they'd been celebrating their engagement and Easter with Simone. Emily watched Jake get dressed, unwilling to face a day that promised to be anything but good. She felt the nausea creeping back in, so reluctantly got out of bed and began dragging her own clothes on. She didn't have time to feel unwell. She had Barbara and David to focus on. "You're very pale," Jake said as they sat down for breakfast, which yet again held little interest for Emily. "You really had better go and see a doctor." "Maybe you're right." Emily didn't really think her general heaviness and lethargy warranted a trip to the doctor, given what Barbara was going through. It was probably just a virus. But it would be good to know what was going on. "I'll go down to Hope Springs and see if I can catch up with Dad, too. And I suppose I'd better check Mum's not off booking churches," she said, smiling and rolling her eyes in an attempt to lighten the mood. Jake smiled back, clearly appreciating her efforts. But it didn't help. Nothing would until they heard all was well with their friends, though if they lost the baby. Emily tried not to think about that. She didn't know what she'd do if that happened. They just had to hope it didn't. Trust in the universe. Though look how it had turned on Barbara and David. Emily packed sandwiches, some cake and a thermos of coffee and saw Jake off at the door with a lingering hug. Her heart was heavy as she watched him walk down the path and turn and wave at the gate. Grace, obviously sensing she was needed by her mistress' side, remained with Emily. She sat back down at the kitchen table. Her fingers itched to phone David, but she resisted. They would call when they knew more or needed something from them. Meanwhile, she had to give them their space. The thought of a day with nothing to do looming ahead was a little terrifying. She had to phone and order the chandelier, but as excited as she'd been about it last night, it all seemed so insignificant now. She'd said as much to Jake over the muesli she pushed back and forth in her bowl. "Life must go on, Em," he'd replied. "It's not about us. I don't think Barbara and David would want us putting our project on hold because of them." It was all right for him. He was actually doing something constructive, something to help. She just felt useless and frustrated. She watched the clock's minute hand tick painfully slowly towards 9 and then phoned the medical centre. She was in luck. There had been a cancellation, so she secured an appointment for later that morning. Then she phoned Karen, who told her the chandelier she'd seen a couple of months ago was still available. The day was looking up. As Emily drove towards Hope Springs, half an hour away from her farm, she glanced at her ring twinkling above her finger on the steering wheel. Her parents would be seeing it for the first time today if they were home. They should be excited, celebrating, cracking open champagne. But how could she even think of her happiness and future when Barbara and David's hung in limbo? She went straight to the medical centre, parked, went in, presented her Medicare card, signed the form, and took a seat between a pimply-faced teenager and an old man wheezing with emphysema. She picked a magazine from the stack and settled in, willing her nausea to subside. She'd had a wave of it so strong as she was leaving the house that she'd grabbed one of the empty fruit buckets and taken it in the car. As she opened the magazine, her ring caught her eye again. She probably should organise a notice announcing their engagement in the Chronicle before too long. She made a mental note to mention it to Jake that night. Emily smiled to herself at recalling how Gran always referred to that section in the paper as Hatch, Match and Dispatch, births, marriages and deaths. She had just become engrossed in an article about Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin, conscious uncoupling, how bloody ridiculous, when she heard her name called. Already? With a slight sigh, she dumped the magazine and made her way to where a tall, straight-backed male doctor with a receding grey hairline, kind eyes, and a gentle smile stood at the open door with a file in his hand. "So, my dear, what can I do for you today?" he asked. She had no idea what his name was.
Well, I'm just feeling a bit off, a bit queasy. I have been pretty busy lately, but for a few days now I've been feeling weary all the time. I seem to have gone off coffee too, but that's hardly likely to be a symptom of anything now, is it?
She finished off with a flutter of her hand. "You do look a little pale," the doctor said after patiently waiting out her ramble. "Any other symptoms? Vomiting, diarrhea?" Emily shook her head.
No. It doesn't come on suddenly with cramps or anything. Not like I've eaten something that's disagreed with me. I didn't overindulge in chocolate over Easter.
She let out a nervous little laugh.
And I haven't actually thrown up, just felt like I might, quite a bit.
Right. So really, you just feel a bit off, not quite right? And for a few days now?
Yes, but I actually feel perfectly fine right now,
Emily said with some surprise, as she suddenly realised she did in fact feel perfectly fine.
Maybe I've just been doing too much.
She pulled the handbag on her lap tighter to her. "Well, you're here now. It might just be a virus, in which case you'll just have to ride it out, I'm afraid. But you could be low in iron or deficient in something else. Best I check you over and take some blood, just to be sure." He put his hands under her jaw and felt her glands. Brrr, cold hands. "Your glands aren't up, so I doubt it's glandular fever." He took a little light on a stick from his top drawer and looked in her ears, then held her tongue down with a wooden spatula and looked into her mouth. Next he inserted a thermometer in her ear for a few moments, then drew it out and read it without so much as a murmur. He wrapped the wide strap of the blood pressure cuff around her arm, pumped the rubber ball until Emily thought her arm would be crushed, undid it and released her, and then got up and went out of sight where Emily heard him fossicking about. A few moments later he came back. She tried not to look at the needle in the little bowl. She pulled up her sleeve, looked away as the needle went in, and concentrated on breathing calmly and evenly like the doctor instructed. "There, all done," he said, putting a little round sticking plaster over the hole in her vein. "I'll order a full count. The results should be here in a week." He sat back in his chair and linked his hands in his lap. He seemed to be looking her over, not just looking at her. Emily squirmed a little under his scrutiny. Is he still consulting, or am I meant to be leaving? He'll get up to show me out, right? So I sit tight until then? She frowned to herself. A few more moments passed with Emily feeling more and more awkward. His glance momentarily passed over the ring on her finger, then he smiled. "There is another possibility. Could you be pregnant?" The question hit Emily like a bolt of lightning. She felt what little blood was remaining in her face drain. She blinked at him in disbelief. She tried to speak, opened her mouth a few times, but when no words came out, closed it again. Could I? The words echoed in her head. She tried to think, but the sharp tick of the wall clock and a new gurgling sound in her ears made it impossible. "When was your last period?" the doctor continued. Emily frowned and tried desperately to rack her brain. Ages, actually. She was on the pill, but often started the next month without taking the little white sugar tablets that filled in the days of the period. Well, Slowly the fog in her mind started to clear. Now she thought about it, she had meant to get another prescription a while ago. Right around the time the whole cottage project had started to take shape. And then she'd been flat out busy. She must have clean forgotten. Oh, God. It became even clearer. She'd put her foil of pills, which she usually left out on the bathroom vanity top as a reminder, in the drawer when the guys had come to stay to do the stonework. Shit, that was around 2 months ago. Emily felt her face go bright red. I can't remember, she said quietly. I suppose I could be pregnant. Well, a blood test will tell us for sure, the doctor said, smiling kindly. We'll know next week. God, that'll be an excruciating wait. But the thought of standing at the chemist's counter with a pregnancy test kit for the world to see was even more excruciating. How was she meant to go on business as usual for a whole week? Damn living out in the sticks. She wouldn't mind betting results came back the next day in the city. Meanwhile, the doctor continued, opening another of his desk drawers, take one of these. Emily looked at the box in his hand, labelled Home Pregnancy Test, and almost leapt up and hugged him. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This way she'd find out in a few minutes and wouldn't have to suffer the embarrassment of purchasing one. Thanks very much, she said. I'm sure it can be a bit daunting to buy one of these in a small country town. Not to mention carrying a little jar of pee across the waiting room for me to test, the doctor said, smiling warmly at her. But this will do the same. Emily nodded. Come back in a week and we'll see where things stand then, he said, getting up and clearly signalling the consult was over. Emily stuffed the small, oblong box into her handbag and left the room. She walked past the desk where a few people were being attended to. She knew she should wait and book in to get her results, but found herself walking out of the building in a daze. She'd have to phone them at another time, when she felt less like a rabbit caught in headlights. She had a strange, out-of-kilter feeling, as if her whole world had tilted on its axis. She sat in the car for a few minutes, wondering what to do next and trying to figure out if she was pleased or not pleased, or just terrified, at the prospect of being pregnant. All of the above, she decided. She thought about going back into the medical centre to use the loos to pee on the little strip. No, she'd wait until she got home. What difference would a few more hours make? Was it something she and Jake should do together, like a ceremony? She'd seen that in movies, but had always thought couples leaping about clutching a stick someone had just peed on quite disgusting. What would he want? Despite the shock, Emily decided to carry on with her original plan to visit her parents before she left town. She wasn't sure she had the necessary tolerance to deal with her mother, but she wanted to see her dad. A warm hug was just what she needed, and she really should show them the ring before everyone else saw it. Enid would have a fit if someone told her they'd seen it first. Chapter 30. Emily took a deep, fortifying breath and got out of the car, dragging her handbag from the passenger seat as she went. She rang the doorbell and waited, choosing to ignore the usual custom of just entering. She no longer wanted her mother doing it to her and wanted to set a reasonable example at her parents' home. The door opened and Des stood there in front of her. Suddenly she felt like she was 12 again, helpless and innocent after a day of being bullied at school and needing a hug and kind word from a loving parent. She almost burst into tears. "Hi, Dad," she said, struggling to compose herself.
"Em, what a wonderful surprise,"
Des Oliphant said, drawing her into a warm, welcoming embrace. Emily breathed in his scents: imperial leather soap, Old Spice aftershave, and wool with just the slightest hint of eucalyptus clinging to it, before pulling away. If she stayed like that too long, she might crumble.
"Enid, Em's here,"
Des called, as he led his daughter into the open-plan kitchen dining area.
"We weren't expecting you, were we?"
Enid said, looking up from the sink. Her mother had pink rubber gloves on and was scrubbing the stainless steel with white cream cleanser. "No, I was just in town and thought I'd pop by for a quick visit," she said.
"Oh,"
Enid said. Her hands stilled but remained in the sink.
"What are you doing in Hope Springs that you can't do in Wattle Creek?"
she inquired, eyeing Emily.
"Just this and that."
"Like what?"
Enid persisted. She racked her brain for a plausible excuse. Seeing the doctor wouldn't cut the mustard because she didn't look sick. No sniffling nose, croaky voice, or other symptom. She looked down at her hands for inspiration and spied her diamond blinking up at her.
"Isn't it enough that she's dropped in, Enid?"
Des said.
"Well, I'm pleased to see you, pet,"
he added, looking pointedly at Enid and draping a protective arm around his daughter. Enid let out a quiet harumph and resumed her scrubbing in the sink.
"I thought you might like to see my engagement ring,"
Emily said, putting her left hand out and wiggling her fingers.
"Oh, yes, please,"
Des said, grasping her hand mid-wiggle.
"Oh, what a beauty. It's lovely. Look, Enid."
Enid made a show of leaning across, still with gloved hands in the sink, and trying not to be impressed. But Emily noticed her eyebrows lift and her eyes grow just that bit wider.
"Yes, lovely,"
she said primly, and then turned on the tap.
"Right, well, who's for a cuppa?"
Des asked.
"Do you have anything herbal, like peppermint or something?"
"But you always have regular tea, coffee, or Milo,"
Enid said, looking at her suspiciously. Emily was half expecting her to add, "What, too good for your usual now you're sporting a large diamond, eh?"
"Come on, Enid, give the girl a break. She wants something different. It's a free country. Let me check. I do vaguely remember seeing some peppermint in there. It came as part of a Christmas hamper from the Greens last year,"
Des said, and made his way across the kitchen. Emily stood at the end of the bench while her mother continued to give the stainless steel sink all her attention. At her hip was her handbag, where the pregnancy test kit was practically burning a hole through the leather. As the silence went on, punctuated only by the sound of her father fossicking in the large pantry cupboard, Emily grew more and more restless.
"Ah, found it,"
Des said, and reappeared clutching a small cellophane packet with tightly packed green envelopes inside it.
"Will this do the trick?"
"Perfect, thanks, Dad,"
she said, offering him a warm smile. Well, that was what she was going for. It might have come out more as a grimace.
"Excuse me, Enid,"
Des said as he held the kettle near the sink and swivelled the spout of the tap around to fill it. Enid reluctantly stepped aside and he turned on the water. "Do you mind if I just use the loo?" Emily said.
"Of course not, pet. You don't need to ask. Go right ahead,"
Des said.
"Are you sure you're okay? You look a little green around the gills."
"I'm fine," Emily said. She rushed past her mother, who was now using the dishcloth to wipe away imaginary drips from the bench top. She shut the toilet door behind her and sat down while letting out a huge breath. Why does it have to be so hard? Was Enid still angry with her about not wanting a wedding? Well, she'd have to damn well get over it, because Emily was not giving in, not this time. Anyway, would Enid still want to parade her daughter around if she was sporting a prominent baby bump? The thought of her quickly backpedaling from organising the wedding almost made Emily giggle. With shaking hands, she drew the long box out of her handbag. She read the instructions, pulled out one of the 2 foil-sealed packets, and opened it. Holding the test stick, she reread the instructions and tried to commit to memory if 1 line or 2 pink lines meant she was pregnant. But her brain was failing her. She undid her jeans, pulled everything down, and tried to position herself over the white stick just inside the toilet bowl. "Please don't get pee everywhere," she begged, as she tried to let out just a small amount. Oh, yuck. Gross. Rather than just a nice little targeted dribble on the stick, she'd managed to wee all over her hand. A few wayward drops fell on the seat as she brought it up to eye level. Apparently she had to wait 5 minutes for the reading. How was she going to get away with being in here for that long without another inquisition? "Are you all right in there?" Emily cringed at hearing her mother's voice. She rolled her eyes. She's like a bloody heat-seeking missile. "Yes, fine, coming," she called back, looking around desperately. She yanked a few tissues from the floral plastic-covered tissue box matching the soap dispenser and toilet brush holder and quickly wrapped the stick in them. As if it could get any grosser, she thought, holding the wad with the tips of her fingers. With her nose turned up in distaste, she pushed it into her handbag along with the remaining stick in the box and did up the zip. She carefully wiped the seat, rearranged her clothing, flushed the loo, and washed her hands. Drying her hands on the coordinating hand towel, she composed herself in the mirror. Emily opened the door to find her mother standing on the threshold and got such a fright she leapt back slightly and almost dropped her handbag. "God, Mum," she said, bringing a hand to her chest. "All yours," she said brightly, and quickly made her way back to the kitchen where a steaming mug of peppermint tea awaited her on a coaster on the table.
"Everything all right, pet?"
Des asked, looking up from his own mug. "Yes, thanks, fine."
"It really is the most beautiful engagement ring," he said, nodding at Emily's hand. "Congratulations again. He's very lucky to have you."
"Thanks, Dad. I think I'm pretty lucky too. I can't believe he actually asked you."
"Shows a lot of respect in my book. I did feel bad about keeping it from your mother, and I'm not entirely off the hook yet. But I couldn't have a... Well, she can be so..."
He gave up with a shake of his head and picked up his mug. "I know," Emily said, following suit. As she sipped her tea, Emily couldn't decide if she was hoping the little white stick would turn out to be positive or negative. She wasn't afraid of what Jake would say if she was pregnant. He definitely wanted kids. And they were engaged, so it wasn't as if they weren't committed. But she did feel very jittery about the reality of being pregnant, all the awful medical things she'd heard about. And oh God, if Barbara lost her baby after such a battle only to find Emily had accidentally got pregnant and all was well...
"You haven't been overdoing it, have you?"
Des quizzed her again.
"You're looking awfully pale."
"Just a little washed out. You're probably right. Just been doing too much."
"Oh, I'm not surprised. You had a lot of work taking care of all those men, and the project certainly has come along quickly.
It has. We're already starting to put the guest list together for the opening party. Oh, and Jake's sister Simone has agreed to be my first artist,
Emily said proudly. I didn't know Simone was an artist, Enid said, returning to the room with her handbag. Not that I know anything about her, she added. Emily ignored the pointed comment.
Well, she dabbles, mainly in acrylic at the moment. She's got some gorgeous, large, bold floral pieces in her home, but this will be her first ever exhibition.
Sounds very modern. I'm not sure I like the sound of them. And do you think that's wise, Emily, if she's completely unknown? Enid said.
She's very talented, just chose a different career path. All the famous artists had to start somewhere, Mum, and I like the idea of helping her.
How wonderful that you can give her the opportunity to shine in public. I look forward to seeing her work, Des said enthusiastically.
Thanks, Dad.
Well, it sounds like an awfully big risk to me. I hope you know what you're doing, Enid warned.
Emily tried hard to not roll her eyes.
Oh, I forgot the biscuits,
Des added, getting up.
No, don't bother. I'd better get going anyway,
Emily said. She drained her mug and stood up.
Jake started up at David's today.
Emily had no idea how this was meant to explain her need to get going. It had just slipped out. She couldn't exactly say that she needed to rush off to check if she was pregnant or not.
Thanks for the cuppa,
she said, putting her mug in the sink.
I have to head off to a Lions ladies' meeting, Enid announced, and offered Des and then Emily air kisses from about 6 inches away.
Des walked Emily to the front door while Enid made her way to the door off the kitchen into the garage.
Bye, Dad,
she said into her father's neck as he hugged her goodbye. She waved to her mother backing out of the driveway as she got into her car, and then waved again to Des, who was still standing on the front step as she pulled away from the curb. Emily considered stopping in the next street to check the little white stick, but the last thing she needed was Enid or one of their neighbours pulling up alongside her and asking what she was doing. She couldn't exactly claim she was looking at a map for directions. As she drove back to the farm, she thought about going straight out to David and Barbara's to see Jake and have them see the result together. But she didn't want to distract him from his work for their dear friends in their time of need. And anyway, did the results stay on the little stick indefinitely or go away after a while? The last thing she needed was to have to squat in the middle of the paddock to use the second tester. No, she'd find out for sure and tell Jake later. Back in her own kitchen, Emily dumped her bag on the table, unzipped it, pulled out the wad of tissues, and unwrapped it. She stared at the 2 pink lines, trying to remember what that meant. She reached into her bag for the box, struggled, and then gave it a good tug. It flew from her hands and fell on the floor. She bent down to pick it up and then banged her head on the underside of the table as she stood back up. She almost laughed. The universe clearly didn't want her to know the result. Finally, she calmed down, sat back on the chair, and compared the picture on the box to the plastic tester. She looked from the box to the tester a few times to make sure, and then stared at the stick. 2 pink lines. She was pregnant. Emily wasn't sure how she felt, other than numb. At least the nausea seemed to have gone away in all the excitement. Uh-oh, spoke too soon. She put a hand to her mouth and bolted to the toilet. This time she actually threw up. She flushed the loo and washed her face in the bathroom next door. As she did, she stared at herself in the mirror. What was she expecting to see? That she looked completely different as a result of what she'd just learned? Probably. She laughed at her ridiculousness. Sure, 1 pea on a little white plastic strip had totally changed her life, but she didn't actually look any different than she had 5 minutes ago. She was almost disappointed. Where was the radiant glow? She went back to the kitchen and put the kettle on, as much for something to do as wanting to actually consume anything. As the machine hissed into life, she thought about the magnitude of what she had just learnt. Was she ready to be a mother? At the barbecue back in February, she'd held Steve and Grant's babies and just felt paranoid about dropping them. She'd felt nothing remotely like maternal stirrings inside her. So, no, she probably wasn't ready. But who is? Did she want a child? Maybe. Though the timing wasn't exactly perfect. In a few months she was opening a gallery and would be run off her feet keeping track of a new business. The timing is never perfect. You'd better be a quiet one or else Mummy won't cope, she told her stomach. Lots of sleeping, little one. She thought of her own mother, wondered how Enid had felt when she had learnt about her pregnancy with Emily. But of course that was different. She had been married. She'll have a fit at me getting pregnant out of wedlock. Would Enid be the cold, children should be seen and not heard style of grandmother? Or would she surprise them all and be the warm, doting mother figure Emily had never had? Like Gran. Oh, Gran, I wish you were here, she said, looking up towards the ceiling. What sort of mother will I be? What sort of parents will we be? She suddenly had the overwhelming urge to tell Jake. Chapter 31. Emily drove through Barbara and David's yard, past the house and the shearing shed, and on down to where she saw her bright, shiny blue ute parked near some equipment a couple of 100 metres ahead in a small paddock of old silvered stubble. The place was eerily quiet, like a ghost town. She reached over and patted Grace beside her for comfort. For about the 100th time that day she crossed her fingers and hoped all would be well. The wait for news from Adelaide was excruciating. She could only imagine how Barbara and David must be feeling while they waited on test results and doctors' opinions. She made her way slowly, not much more than a walking pace, letting the car roll down the slight decline, following the smooth, worn earth track cut deep from sheep and vehicle movement over the years. Jake's green tractor was creeping its way along the far side of the next paddock. It must be a big paddock. He was only on his first lap. She didn't want to sit for too long pondering and worrying about Barbara and David and how Jake might react to her news, but she had no choice. She'd have to hope he'd see her car and pull up. She didn't want to phone and disturb him, especially when he was on his first lap and needed to get the far edge of the wide machine as close as possible to the fence without hitting it. She wouldn't have minded letting sleeping dogs lie, another favourite saying of Gran's, but that wasn't an option either. The rational part of her knew he'd be fine. He'd said he wanted kids one day. But fear and insecurity still burbled away deep within her. People often said things they didn't mean or changed their minds when put on the spot. Hell, no one could really say how they'd feel about something as life-changing as this until it actually happened. She was terrified. Not just of Jake's reaction, but the whole thing. The 9 months, or however long there was left, of changes to her body, then the trauma at the end. And then the next 30 years raising a child and doing your best to ensure they turned out to be a well-adjusted, fully functioning contributor to society. And happy. She wouldn't care what direction the kid wanted to go in as long as he or she was happy. She would make sure they knew that that was what mattered. God, what if there was something physically or mentally wrong with him or her? The fear flared up in her again and she struggled for breath. Would she have one of those tests to see if there was anything wrong before the birth? Would she ever have the nerve to terminate? Oh God, there's so much to think about. She came to a halt beside the ute, a little way away from where she knew the tractor would need to get access to the truck to fill up. She put the handbrake on and turned off the key. Her heart was racing. At least she had Jake to share the load with. Hopefully he would be happy about it. Of course he'd be happy about it. They were committed, engaged, for goodness sake. It wasn't as if they'd had a one-night stand. And he definitely wanted kids, she knew that. So what was her problem? Was this irrationality down to hormones? Perhaps all the worrying about Barbara and David was affecting her. Emily leant back against the headrest, closed her eyes, and focused on breathing slowly and deeply, and enjoying the warmth of the sun through the window. It will all work itself out for the best, she told herself. and repeated the words over and over in her head. Finally, the throaty tone of the tractor's huge diesel engine became much closer, and she opened her eyes. She watched Jake making his way along the fence line to her left. At last he was level with the gateway and lining up to start his second lap. The roar turned into a burble as he put the tractor into neutral and left it idling. Emily watched as the door on the far side opened. Jake's figure disappeared from the cab and the door closed again. She got out and began walking in his direction. And then he appeared in practically a run, new Akubra in hand and the bottom of his oilskin jacket flowing out behind him. She stopped in her tracks as she watched possibly the most handsome man she'd ever set eyes on, her man, the father of her child, coming towards her. Her heart flip-flopped and her emotions surged. Grace bounded off to greet him, the white tip of her tail bouncing up and down above her. Jake patted Grace and then moved on and swept Emily off her feet and into his arms, taking her so by surprise that she let out a little gasp. "Oh, I'm so glad to see you," he said, spinning her around. "What a lovely surprise. I wasn't expecting a visit." Then he set her down and scrutinized her features. "How are you feeling?" he asked, touching her face gently with the tips of his fingers. "Did you go and see a doctor?" Emily nodded. "Well, is everything okay, or do I need to come home and look after you?" Emily smiled softly and shook her head. "No what? No, you're not okay, or no, I don't need to come home and look after you? What's going on?" His face became creased with worry. "I'm pregnant," Emily said quietly. "Oh, wow!" His face lit up. "That's great news. Well, it is to me. Are you okay with it? I know we hadn't exactly planned it."
"Guess I have to be,"
she said with a shrug.
"But we've got a lot going on,"
she added with a bit of a grimace. "The timing's not exactly great." "And I'm fucking terrified." "Well, I've always thought people worried too much about the timing of these things. I don't think you'd ever find the perfect time."
"So you're okay with this? Really?"
"Of course. I think it's wonderful news. Seriously," he said, looking intently into her eyes. "Oh, wow," he said, picking her up again and holding her tight to him and kissing her. "Sorry, I'm probably crushing the little one," he said, and carefully set her back down.
"I'm not sure there's much there to crush yet," Emily said.
"So, how far along are you?"
"No idea. The doctor took some blood and I've just done one of those pee-on-the-stick test things. And that's all I know at this point."
"Ah, so the whole district already knows," he said, grinning cheekily.
"Thankfully I didn't have to go into the chemist to buy one. The doctor gave it to me. It seems they've figured out small country towns hold no privacy."
"Fancy that," Jake said lightly. "So," he continued, "did the pill fail? I thought it was meant to be 99% effective."
"Probably is if you remember to take it," she said sheepishly.
"Oh, right." Emily explained where she might have gone wrong. "Whoops," Jake said, grinning. She smiled back and let out a small sigh. All would be well. Jake was genuinely excited about it. His eyes were even sparkling. "So, are you okay with it?" he asked. "You don't exactly sound over the moon."
"I'm probably in a bit of shock, and to be honest, I'm scared."
"Of what?"
"Everything. Getting fat, being sliced open or ripped apart, never enjoying sex again, being a crap mother, not actually liking it."
Emily became breathless. She was getting a little hysterical, but couldn't stop.
"I don't feel the least bit warm and fuzzy and maternal,"
she wailed, tears spilling over.
"What if I'm a terrible mother?"
"Hey, don't cry," he said, wrapping his arms around her. "You'll be fine. We'll work through it together. Like you said, it's a shock.
That and what's going on with Barbara and David is pretty traumatic.
But what if I'm cold and horrible like my mum is with me?
You're nothing like Enid, Emily. There's more than one type of mother. I've had women friends who've said they never felt maternal. Some said they felt a rush of love when they held the baby for the first time, and others confessed to never feeling that way about their children at all, despite knowing that they would throw themselves in front of a truck to save them if they needed to. You feel what you feel, you can't control that. Don't beat yourself up. I'm sure Enid loves you in her own way. She might not have been the warm, demonstrative, loving mother you wanted, but I'm sure she would have done anything to protect you, he said, smiling sympathetically and stroking her hair. You just be you, and you'll do great. Anyway, there's plenty of time for you to get used to the idea. It's all very new. But I'm glad you felt you could be honest with me about how you're feeling, he added, looking deeply into her face. I love you, Emily. We can get through anything together if we keep talking. Just remember that.
I know. Thanks, Jake. I love you too, she said, wiping her tears away. She felt much better. Gran was so right when she said that a problem shared was a problem halved. She wasn't alone. She had to remember that. So how are things going here?
Well, I had to fill everything up, so I've only just started. I got a call from Bob. He'll be here tonight. I think they're going to put together a roster around their own work. All chip in a few hours here and there.
It's a pity I can't drive a tractor, Emily said, glancing across at David's larger John Deere parked nearby.
I'm sure you can, you just haven't tried, Jake said.
Do you think you could teach me? She asked. John had never given her the chance.
Well, I'd love to, but I don't know enough myself. David taught me what gear and revs to use with this tractor, but his is bigger, so I'm sure it'll be different. Anyway, hopefully they'll be back very soon with tales of a false alarm, and he'll be able to finish his own cropping, Jake added, clearly attempting to sound upbeat. So you haven't heard anything? Emily asked. She knew he would have said if he had, but she had to ask anyway. No.
After a pause that neither of them knew how to fill, Jake changed the subject.
I'd better get back to it,
he said with an apologetic grin. Yes, you go, Emily said, pecking him on the lips and then making shooing motions with her hands.
Thanks for coming up and telling me straight away, Jake said. And don't worry so much. I think it's great news, he added, giving her a quick hug. He blew her a kiss and strode off.
Have fun, she called, as Grace trotted after him. After a few more steps, he stopped and turned.
Okay if she comes with me?
He asked, nodding at the dog. That's fine, Emily called back and waved. You have fun too, Gracie. She stood with her hands thrust deep in the pockets of her thick, fleecy jacket, suddenly aware of the icy wind rushing around her. She normally enjoyed watching him drive off, in command of the big, powerful machine. It was so manly. But she was getting really quite cold. What was taking him so long? Emily waited a few more moments and then got back into the car to wait. Maybe he was checking the air seeder or something. But he was taking ages. And then Jake's long, lean frame appeared behind the machine and he was walking back towards her with Grace beside him. This time his stride was slow and heavy. What was wrong? What could have happened in the last minute and a half? Had he suddenly realized the impact of them bringing a child into the world? Was he having second thoughts? Then she saw the mobile phone in his hand. Emily got out and went over to meet him. His face was ashen, his lips fixed in a grim line. Gone were the bright, cheery features, the happiness and excitement twinkling in his eyes.
David just phoned,
he said, standing in front of her.
Barbara lost the baby.
Oh, no, Emily said. bringing her hands to her face. She looked up at him, his features blurring as the tears filled her eyes. Jake drew her to him and they clung to each other. Emily began to sob, letting go of all the tension, nervousness, fear, and sadness. Amid her sobbing, she felt Jake begin to shake as well. He too was crying. They stood there for a few minutes, wetting each other's shoulders until the tears slowed to a trickle and the raw emotion had subsided. They parted and looked into each other's tear-stained, shattered features.
"How are we going to tell them our news? They'll be devastated,"
Emily said quietly, her chin quivering.
"I have no idea,"
Jake said, shaking his head slowly.
"I'm sure they'll put on a brave face and say they're happy for us, but it will tear them apart too,"
Emily said.
"I know,"
Jake said, now running a hand through his hair.
"It's all too soon. Perhaps when the dust settles,"
he said, a little helplessly.
"But what if they can never? We'll be a constant reminder."
"We'll just have to wait and see. Cross these bridges when we come to them, as they say." "Oh, God, what a mess," he said,
rubbing his hands roughly across his face.
"Did David say how long they'll be away?"
"No. I think they're still in shock. They're going to need some time. I think we'd better organise people to finish the seeding. At least that'll be one less thing on their minds."
"Do you think I should call?"
Emily asked.
"I honestly don't know."
God, I wish I was there with them.
"They probably just need each other right now,"
he said kindly.
"You're right. But I feel so helpless,"
she said, lifting her hands up and dropping them again.
"I know you do."
They turned at the sound of a vehicle and saw a white ute pulling up. Bob Stanley got out and walked towards them. From the grim look on his face, it seemed he had just had a phone call from David as well.
"Hey, Jake. Hey, Em,"
Bob said, and bent down to briefly pat Grace.
"Hey, Bob,"
Jake said, accepting the hand Bob offered.
"Hi, Bob,"
Emily said.
"Nice to see you, though I wish it were under better circumstances,"
Bob added.
"So you've heard?"
Jake said.
"Yes, David just called. Terrible,"
Bob said, shaking his head.
"They're such good people. They don't deserve this."
Emily thought she saw tears in his eyes and looked away. She didn't want to embarrass him.
"Right, so I can't stay now, but I can do the night shift,"
Bob said, suddenly all businesslike. Better than getting all mopey, I suppose, Emily thought.
"I'll do a ring around. We should be able to get enough blokes and machines to knock it off in a couple of days. I hear you've got a map of what's being planted where?" "Yep, it's in the ute,"
Jake said.
"Great. I reckon put it in the front of the truck so if you're not here, anyone who comes in knows what the go is."
"Righto, fair enough."
"Well, I'd better get back. I've left my wife to do a few laps at our place. If she finishes the paddock while I'm not there, I might have a gate to replace,"
he said with a smile.
"Hey, before you go," Jake said, "could you tell me what gears and revs to use for the other tractor? I'm a bit new at all this, and maybe Emily here could do some driving as well." "Have you driven a tractor before?" Bob asked her.
No."
"Don't worry, there's nothing to it. Best you steer clear of first laps, though." "I'm just about to start the second one here," Jake said. "Good, we'll put her into that one. Emily, I'll give you a quick lesson. Wait here while I just show Jake what's what with the bigger beast."
He and Jake left with Grace trotting alongside them. Emily waited, gradually becoming more and more nervous. She was glad she always carried water in the car. She might be out here for a while. She had her bottle in her hand when Bob came back a few minutes later.
Righto, come on, time for tractor driving 101.
Thanks so much for this, Bob,
Emily said, as she hurried to keep up with his long stride.
Sorry you have to do this and get held up,
she added a little breathlessly.
No worries. It'll be good to get a second tractor going right away anyway. Makes me feel better about not dropping everything over my way. I've only got a few hundred acres left. I figured it's best to just finish and then be free to help David, he added.
Driving a tractor turned out to be quite similar to driving a manual car, though you didn't start in first and there were 2 gear levers to worry about rather than 1. Once you got going and managed to get to the right revs, revolutions per minute rather than kilometres per hour, it got even easier. Bob explained that it was important to keep the revs at a constant speed so the seeds went in the ground evenly. The main concern for Emily was making sure the far tine of the huge machine behind her lined up neatly with the edge of the previous lap. There were a few wobbles to start with while she figured out how sensitive the power steering was. Very.
Try and straighten it up next lap, Bob said. Otherwise, when the crop comes up, the lines will be wonky for the whole district to see, and possibly the world, thanks to Google Earth.
How embarrassing.
Don't worry about it too much. David will be grateful enough for the help not to be concerned about a few gaps or extra thick patches here and there.
In addition to keeping everything straight and at the right even speed, she also had to continually keep turning her head to check on the gauges showing the levels of the seed and fertilizer in the machine trundling along behind. It was easy enough to drive, but there was so much else to keep an eye on. Thank goodness it wasn't one of the totally computerized systems. That would probably do her head in. She tried to ignore Jake making his way around ahead of them and concentrate on what she was doing. Bob was a good teacher, calm and patient. He stayed for the whole of her first lap, which took over an hour. Finally, they got back level with where everything was parked.
Right, you'll be fine from here, Bob said. You did well for a first-timer. John was a fool not to utilise your skills, stupid idiot, he muttered, shaking his head. With that, he leapt out, shut the door behind him, bounded down the steps, gave her a smile and a wave, and ran over to his ute.
Let's hope I can do all this on my own.
Emily successfully got the vehicle back in motion and gave herself a little mental fist pump of achievement before focusing on the speed and direction. Bob had turned off the radio the moment they'd started their lesson. She would have liked to turn off the UHF and shut out the annoying chatter that seemed to have suddenly picked up, but it was her lifeline to Jake across the way. She just had to do her best to block it.
You there, Em?
His voice rang out clear amongst the chatter.
Got the hang of it okay?
Yep,
she said, after retrieving the handset from its hook.
You're doing well,
he said.
Thanks. It's not nearly as hard as it looks, is it? It's actually quite good fun.
Tell me that when you've driven 50 laps. He laughed. I'll leave you to concentrate.
Thanks.
She hung up the hard plastic handpiece and returned her attention to the dials inside the cab, lines of freshly sown earth on the ground, and gauges and levels on the huge machine behind her. 3 hours later, the only parts of the paddock not a rich chocolate-brown colour were the small sections in the corners that got missed with each lap as the wide machines swept around. Emily had often heard mention of headlands on the UHF in the house while married to John. Now she finally understood what they were referring to. Bob had explained that because the big machines couldn't do really tight corners, a gap was left as you swept around the bend of the corner. These were the last parts of the paddock to be done. It was quite fascinating now she was actually a part of it. Once all the laps had been done and all that was left were the gaps radiating out to each of the corners, you drove out one corner, turned around, but being careful not to turn too sharply, and headed back the other way. Thanks to Bob's instructions, Emily knew exactly what Jake meant when he told her to just drive out the first one and leave the rest to him. It was rough driving across the furrows, and she was a bit shaken up by the time she got back to the gate and stopped. But she felt an incredible sense of achievement. For 3 hours she'd had something to concentrate on other than Barbara and David, and her guilt around her own change of circumstances. For 3 hours she'd been doing something concrete and practical to help, rather than sitting around feeling helpless. She sat with the tractor idling while she waited for Jake to complete the other headlands and pull up behind her. Bright orange late afternoon sun streamed in the windows. Jake leapt up the steps beside her and opened the door and leaned in. He must have left Grace in the other tractor. "How was it?" he asked, after giving her a kiss.
"Good, but not exactly relaxing. There's so much you have to keep an eye on."
"It gets easier. You did great," he said.
"Well, we'll see how wobbly David's crop comes up," she said with a grimace.
"I'll take it through the gate for you. It's a bit of a tight squeeze."
Emily vacated the comfy seat and let Jake sit down. She remained standing beside him and watched, fascinated, as he manoeuvred the machine through the gateway that seemed barely wide enough. He parked the tractor in the paddock beside the truck and left it idling. Emily got out and waited beside her car and watched while Jake walked back and brought the second tractor through the gateway. Then he got out and lifted Grace down. She called the dog to her so she'd be safely out of the way, and then watched as Jake filled the hoppers. She was cold, but wanted to continue being a part of it all. Jake had filled the first machine, moved it out of the way, brought the second in, and was almost finished filling the last pair of hoppers when he turned his head towards something in the distance.
"Looks like the cavalry has arrived,"
he shouted above the pop-pop of the little petrol motor running beside them and the drone of the idling tractor. Emily looked over, had to shade her eyes from a sudden burst of sunshine, and saw a convoy of tractors, trucks, and utes coming up over the rise towards them. Her heart surged. She'd seen her district band together in times of need before, but it never ceased to choke her up. Even seeing vision on the TV of another community far away doing the same flooded her with emotion. You didn't need to be a born and bred farmer to appreciate genuine mateship and camaraderie. She'd heard of farmers banding together to harvest crops for a mate who had been struck down by illness or for his wife and family upon his death, but Emily had never actually been a part of it before. If she wasn't so awestruck and there weren't people about to see her, she'd have retreated to the car for a weep. Instead, she swallowed hard and pulled herself together. Soon there was a small group of men and a lad of about 15 standing around introducing themselves and shaking hands with Jake. Emily smiled and nodded at Grant and Steve and raised her hand in greeting. They were the only two in the group she recognised. Their presence made her feel a little less self-conscious about being the only woman. She watched as Jake unrolled David's map on the bonnet of the nearest ute and gestured at the paddock, telling them it was the one that they'd just sowed and then indicating where it was on the map. Heads nodded, voices mumbled. Emily felt a part of it, but also separate. But she didn't mind. She was suddenly feeling very weary. The day was catching up with her. She turned at hearing a voice very near.
"Okay if I drive your tractor?"
the young lad asked shyly. She blinked, frowned slightly, and then nodded. Of course it was actually her tractor, just like the farm and all its equipment. The probate notification had arrived in the mail a few weeks ago.
"Thanks, that'd be great," she said,
offering the lad a warm smile. She didn't need to ask if he knew how. Around here, kids were driving from as young as 8 years of age, often propped up on cushions they had to get down off in order to stomp on the brakes and clutch. Thankfully, with tractors, the throttle was hand-operated, and so once he got going, you didn't need to be able to reach the floor until you wanted to stop. Emily had had to slide off the seat slightly to reach the pedals, but then they hadn't taken the time to adjust the seat for her shorter legs. It wasn't as necessary as when driving a car. The lad moved away and Emily made her way around the group to Jake.
"I'm going to head off," she said. "I'll take Grace with me."
"Righto. Thanks for your help. You saved us a heap of time,"
Jake said, smiling warmly at her. Emily smiled back, pleased with her accomplishment.
"Thanks."
"Good idea to take Grace. It's getting too busy and dangerous, especially with the sun going down. Can you pick up Sasha on your way past the house? We should take her home with us."
Emily gave him a quick hug and kiss, feeling a little ill at ease at being watched by so many who knew she'd so recently been John Stratton's wife.
"Come on, Gracie, let's go see your mum,"
she said, as she turned the car around. Chapter 32. Emily stopped the car outside the shearing shed where she knew Sasha liked to snooze the day away. Her heart ached when she thought about how quiet the place was. There wasn't even a squawking or chirping bird to be heard. Grace raced ahead and disappeared through the gap where the door was always left ajar for Sasha. Emily looked through the small opening and blinked while her eyes adjusted to the darkness. She spied Grace's white tip.
"Come on, Sasha girl," she called. "You're going on a little holiday."
Grace trotted past her and back into the daylight. And then Emily felt a gentle nudge to her leg. Sasha was looking up at her and waving her tail slowly back and forth. Seeing how forlorn the dog looked, Emily had to swallow hard to stop herself from giving into tears. Though really, she told herself, Sasha didn't look any sadder than usual. She was a quiet, pensive-looking creature at the best of times. Did she have any idea of the drama going on within her family? She'd been fed, which was probably all that mattered to her. She wasn't a pampered house dog like Grace. Barbara and David came and went from the place quite a bit. Nothing was really out of order for her yet. Emily drove home with Sasha and Grace, thinking about where she'd put the older dog. Sasha wasn't used to living inside. She could put her in the outdoor laundry, but then she might whine at the door, wanting to be with her daughter. And if she left Grace out there, the spoilt younger dog was sure to demand to be let in as soon as it got chilly. In the end, she decided to set up another bed in the kitchen and just keep her fingers crossed that Sasha was smart enough to ask when she needed to go outside. David might be a little annoyed at her turning Sasha into a softie, but that was just too bad. She was playing Auntie Em and could spoil her if she wanted to. At home, Grace was ecstatic about having canine company. She trotted around after Emily while she gathered extra bedding and bowls, pausing to give Sasha a smooch every time she passed her. The older dog stood in the one spot, patiently looking on, seeming to take it all in. When everything was set up, she lay on her bed as instructed. Emily sat at the table and looked at both dogs. Their demeanours were so different. Grace was curled up, snoozing contentedly. But Sasha crouched with her head on her paws, her eyes following Emily's every move. Her heart lurched again as she looked at the sad expression. She looked away and tried to blink back the forming tears, but they kept on coming. She folded her arms on the table, laid her head on them, and let the tears flow. She felt so sad for Barbara and David, and so helpless and so bloody guilty. How cruel of fate to do this just when everything was going so well. It wasn't fair. Finally, the tears stopped, and she pulled a wad of tissues from her sleeve, mopped her face, and then blew her nose. The two dogs were sitting at attention, heads identically cocked in concern, looking at her. Wanting to feel a little less disconnected, she picked up the phone, found David's number, and dialed. Her heart pounded slowly and heavily while she waited for it to start ringing. It was answered straight away.
"I am,"
David said.
"Oh, David, I'm so sorry. I was out at the farm and Jake told me."
"We're pretty shattered."
He sounded like every word was a huge effort to get out.
"I wish there was something I could say."
"I know. There's nothing anyone can say. We just have to do our best to get through it. At least we have each other," he said, sounding less than convinced.
"How is Barbara doing?"
Trying to put on a brave face. You know how she is. I'm really worried about her, Em. She won't talk about it, to me or anyone.
"Would she talk to me, do you think?"
Emily asked.
I tried to suggest it, but I think she's still too shocked.
"Would it help if I came over?"
Emily asked. At the same time, she looked down at the dogs and wondered who would look after them if she went away. It was too much to put on Jake while he was busy with the cropping. And while her father would happily take over, her mother would have a fit if she even suggested having a dog in her house. Enid Oliphant did not do pets, inside or out.
It's lovely of you to offer, but it's a hell of a long way to come.
"I wouldn't mind,"
she said.
I know you wouldn't. We'll be home in a few days. Until then, I'm hoping she'll agree to see the counsellor here.
And what about you? She hoped David wasn't ignoring his own needs whilst keeping it all together for both of them.
I've already seen him, David said. It helps to talk. I've just got to convince Barbara of that.
Well, if anyone can, you can, Emily said lamely.
So how are things with you two?
David asked, taking her by surprise. Us? We're just worried about you guys, she said.
I hear you've had a go at driving your first tractor. Well done.
Emily smiled despite herself. How could you possibly know that already?
Bob rang just before. He said you did really well.
You'll see just how well or otherwise when your crop comes up, Emily said, allowing herself the tiniest chuckle.
Indeed we will. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Words can't really express.
Emily sensed him choking up and cut in. It's our pleasure, David. We'd do anything for you guys. I just wish we didn't have to. Not like this, she said, choking up again herself. She swallowed hard and cleared her throat. I hope you don't mind, but I've got Sasha here with me.
Turning my dog into a softie, I suppose?
She could tell he was smiling. Yep, good luck turfing her back outside when you get home. David let out a small laugh.
Oh, well, worse things happen at sea, he said.
A heavy silence enveloped them. I'd better let you get back to Barbara, Emily finally said. Please give her my love and tell her I'm thinking of her. You both, every second. If there's anything at all you need, just let us know.
Thanks, Em. You're a gem. And thanks for the call.
You just take good care. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye then.
Emily hung up, relieved to have the call over with. If only she could have been there to wrap her arms around them instead. No words would have been needed. Right, she said to the dogs. We've got some cooking to do, and went to her freezer to look for inspiration.
What's all this?
Jake asked later that night when he finally walked in looking dirty, worn and dishevelled.
Shouldn't you be resting in your condition, oh mother of my child-to-be?
He said, grinning and sweeping her to him. I'm fine. Need to keep busy. It's for Barbara and David. Spaghetti bolognese, beef stroganoff, lamb casserole and chicken cacciatore, Emily said, pointing. I spoke to David. I'm not sure when they'll be home, maybe in a few days, but when they do, I don't want them to worry about cooking for a while.
Good idea, he said, nuzzling her neck. Ah, hello, you, he said, spying Sasha on the floor looking up at him. I hope David's not going to object to you being spoilt.
He's fine with it. I told him. I couldn't leave her out in the cold in a strange place.
How was he?
Holding up remarkably well, I'd say, though it's hard to tell. So what do you fancy for tea? Emily asked. Take your pick.
Oh, beef stroganoff, please. I haven't had it for years.
Good. Well, you go and have a shower, and then you can tell me all about the last couple of hours.
Okay. You're the best, Em,
he said, kissing her on the top of the head.
Have I told you that lately?
Yep, but feel free to repeat yourself, she said, grinning at him. The next morning, after a quick trip into Wattle Creek, Emily drove home with a boot full of groceries and enough ingredients to bake a small mountain of cake and biscuits for Barbara and David. Thankfully, she had arrived early enough to miss the older shoppers, who tended not to leave the house before 10, and later than those who popped in to fill lunchboxes before school. She practically had the supermarket to herself. She was relieved that no one stopped her to ask about Barbara and David. It was not her business to discuss. And with hormones messing with her emotions and causing her to cry at the drop of a hat, she didn't want to embarrass herself by crumbling in public. That wouldn't help anyone. As she passed the bakery, she remembered their first lunch there and began to miss Barbara all over again. They hadn't caught up for lunch for months. She'd been too busy with Jake and the cottage and everything. Now she wished she'd made more effort. Maybe Barbara would have been more at ease with the baby and everything, and... "Oh, dear little one," she told her stomach. "It's not your fault, but this is not going to be easy." Emily sighed. What should be an exciting time was anything but. She still wasn't feeling all gooey and maternal. She cared about the little being growing inside her, she really did, but she was also very concerned about how the news would affect Barbara and David. How could they possibly tell them? And when? What would poor Barbara think, watching Emily's belly growing bigger and bigger, knowing how close she'd come to having her own child, only to have it snatched away? "It's all a bit of a mess, isn't it?" she said, stroking her belly as she drove. Emily was usually happy when she was on a baking mission and could block out most other things. Today, though, the tasks that had become automatic over many years gave her too much space to think. Normally, that was a good thing. She'd worked her way through many a problem whilst rolling out dough, mixing cake batter, or dropping balls of soft biscuit mixture onto trays, pushing it flat with a fork, or poking cherries or almonds into the tops with a finger. Today, it just made her sad and worried. Some of the items she cooked were Barbara's favourites, and she was taken back to the day they had spent cooking up a storm for David's father's funeral and the CWA trading table. Today, the happy memories were tinged with sadness, so Emily didn't linger like she normally would, stretching out the enjoyable experience as long as possible. Whilst everything was cooling enough to package up, she checked her emails. There was a message from Simone. She opened it to see a beautiful image of arched shapes within a circle, the main colour being salmon pink. Was it architectural or a design from somewhere else? It looked familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. Being so different from the pieces Emily had previously seen, she was excited to know more. From Simone Lonergan. Subject, busy artist at work. To Emily Oliphant. CC, Jake Lonergan. "Hi, Emily and Jake. Thanks so much again for your wonderful hospitality. I would have loved to have stayed longer. Oh, well, no rest for the wicked, as they say. I've been painting like a demon at any moment I can get, and totally loving it. Thanks so much again for the kickstart. Here's a pic of a small piece I did last night. Working title is Gothic Sunset, hence the pink tones. It's the window at the top of the gorgeous Gothic ANZ Bank on Collins and Queen. Yes, inspiration taken from Jake's lovely photo. It's been raining cats and dogs here since I got back, so I haven't been able to get out with my camera. But hopefully I will soon. I want to have a good variety for you to choose from for the exhibition. Hope you guys are well. Please send my best to Barbara and David. I did so love meeting them. Lots of love. Simone. Kiss, kiss." Emily felt a new wave of sadness. Jake would have to phone and tell her about Barbara. She forced her attention back to the more positive, Simone's lovely art and the pace she was working at. If Simone could continue to work so quickly, an opening in the not-too-distant future wouldn't be a problem. It was looking likely that it would be in winter. When she and Jake had discussed it the other night, she'd said she thought people ought to be given at least 6 weeks' notice. That was the etiquette with wedding invites, anyway. Jake thought they could get away with a month, and they'd struck a compromise where he would email an advance notice of a general time period to those he wanted to come from Melbourne. He'd do that in the next few days when he finished tractor driving. Emily wrote a quick reply. From Emily Oliphant. Subject, busy artist at work. To Simone Lonergan, CC, Jake Lonergan. "Hi, Simone. It really was wonderful having you stay. We wish you could have stayed longer too. But wow, you're really burning the midnight oil. I hope not literally. Smiley face. I love the image. It's gorgeous. I'm looking forward to seeing what else you come up with. Jake's off on the tractor up at David's property and I've been cooking up a storm, just because. Better run and rescue a batch of biscuits before they burn. Happy painting. Lots of love. Emily. Kiss, kiss." She reread her message before sending and cringed at her few white lies. They were small enough not to matter, weren't they? She couldn't tell Simone via email what was really going on. She pressed send. As she turned off the computer, she wondered if the image would be suitable for the invitations. She was keen to get them finalised and off to a printer. There were quite a few fiddly things left to get done. Jake was looking after most of them, but they were still on her mind. She remained undecided about the sign having an actual button jar on it. Were they running the risk of looking too quaint and unsophisticated? The last thing she wanted was to be mistaken for a hospital auxiliary shop selling tea cosies, lamingtons, and crocheted knee rugs in local footy team colours. Not that there was anything wrong with that, it just wasn't what she had in mind for her business. Jake kept assuring her the logo would be classy, but so far she was yet to see an actual design. Maybe just plain block lettering on a cream background might be better. Ruby red to match the glossy front door and other timber highlights, or perhaps on a gold background.
This is the end of CD 7. The book continues on CD 8. CD 8.
Chapter 33. Emily pondered the sign as she drove out to Barbara and David's. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that they were overcomplicating things by including a logo. They should just stick with the plain and classic. The button jar, fine art and... Fine art and what? Bric-a-brac? No, too casual. Homewares? A bit too limiting. Knickknacks? Curios? No, to Emily these words suggested wares of an ordinary nature and diminished the term fine art. And it was definitely fine art she would be selling, as opposed to decorative art, the stuff brought in by the container load from China. Sure, she'd be selling the odd jar of jam, but the focus was to be art. If only she could think of the right word for an eclectic mix of good quality stuff. Was there one? Until then, it would simply be the Button Jar Fine Art Gallery. Or, even better, Gallery of Fine Art. She pictured it in her mind. The more she thought about it, the more adamant she was. That was the tone she wanted to set. She fought back the sadness as she entered David and Barbara's home. She unloaded her goods from the car into the fridge, freezer, and pantry. She tossed out the old milk and replaced it with a box of unopened Long Life. There was nothing worse than arriving home after being away and not being able to have a cup of tea or coffee. She could only imagine how they would be feeling coming home after this particular trip. It was clear they had left in a hurry. The place was tidy enough, but on the table were 2 mugs and a chopping board with a knife lying across it, and a few scraps of pear core and stalks. Barbara never left anything on the table. It was always cleared and wiped off immediately after every meal. Emily did the few dishes and tidied up. She hesitated at their bedroom where a dirty clothes hamper was overflowing. Would it be overstepping the bounds to do her friend's laundry? She tried to reverse the situation in her mind. How would she feel in the same position? While it might be nice to have the simple act of washing to distract from other things, it also might be nice not to worry about running out of clean clothes. She grabbed the hamper and took it to the laundry. Thankfully, it turned out not to be as full as it first appeared. While the load was whizzing around in the front loader, Emily pondered changing the sheets. She loved fresh sheets and would change her own every day if it wasn't a hideous waste of water and electricity. But some people might actually like coming home to familiar smells, especially after an ordeal. In the end, she decided to leave the neatly made bed as it was. There were plenty of clean sheets in the linen press if needed. She waited and hung out the clothes on the outside line, thanking the sun for being out and shining brightly, and the brisk breeze for blowing. While she was waiting for them to dry, she decided to check on the progress of seeding. From the veranda, all she could see were acres and acres of rich, brown-turned land. The work must be happening out over the next rise. She called the dogs who were snuffling about nearby, and they piled into the car. Sure enough, a few kilometres further into the farm, Emily came over the second rise from the house and discovered a mass of activity. She let the car roll to a halt and stared in awe. As far as she could see in every direction, tractors in all sizes and colours were trundling around paddocks. She counted them, 4 paddocks, 5 tractors in each. 20 tractors. She tried to pick out which one Jake might be in, but couldn't. There were a few green John Deeres, and they all looked pretty much the same. She continued over to what looked like the nerve centre. There was a cluster of utes parked a little way from a line of trucks with seed and fertiliser bins on the back, and shiny metal field bins with augers sticking out of them. It was so well organised. Parked out of the way, she watched as a tractor came in and pulled alongside the front truck. A bloke ran over and pulled the cord to start the small motor to drive the truck's augers to fill the air seeder hoppers. It was fascinating to watch. In just a few minutes, that tractor was driving off and another, a red one this time, was pulling in. Emily got out her camera, told the dogs to stay, and exited the car. She walked around, being careful not to get in the way, and started snapping away. Then the bloke on the truck augers, the noisy little motor now silent again, called and waved her over. As she moved closer, she recognised Bob. She shook his hand.
"Wow," she said. "What a production."
Yeah, least we could do. Taking a few photos?
"It's an amazing sight."
Climb up here and you'll get a great shot right across the paddocks,"
he said, indicating the ladder on the back of the truck.
"Okay, thanks."
"Here, I'll take that while you go up,"
he said, holding out his hand for the camera. Not keen on heights, Emily carefully negotiated the ladder. She leant down and thanked Bob as he passed up the camera.
"Wow, what a spectacular view."
She gulped back a wave of intense emotion. Seeing the activity from ground level had been amazing, but up here it was awe-inspiring. She could see the brightly coloured, evenly spaced tractors making their way around the paddocks, all at the same speed, the patchwork of landscape changing colour behind them. She snapped away. When she was confident she'd got enough good shots, she handed the camera back down to Bob and carefully descended.
"How was it?"
Bob asked.
"Brilliant. What an amazing turnout."
"Yeah, you certainly tear through the acres with this many machines going. We'll be finished in a few hours."
"Which one is Jake?"
she asked.
"Over there to your left. He's in David's John Deere. Young Stevie Richards is in yours still."
Emily felt a surge of pride on Jake's behalf. Helping out here would mean he was accepted into the fold more quickly than he might otherwise have been, though he'd met lots of locals thanks to the cottage project. The district could be a little standoffish when it came to outsiders. It was often said that you weren't local until you were 3rd generation born and bred. That was if you were a farmer. Emily often thought townies needed 5 generations to earn their stripes, farmers being the dominant species. There seemed to be different rules for everything.
"Okay, that's me again,"
Bob said as another tractor came in to fill up.
"Catch you later,"
he said with a wave as he raced over and retook his position by the side of the truck. Emily got back in the car, but she couldn't make herself drive away. Watching this, being part of it, was so special. She sat there watching tractors coming and going and making their way around paddocks and lost all track of time. She was in a mesmerised daze when a tap on her window startled her. She smiled at seeing Jake and wound the window down.
"Hey there,"
he said.
"Hey there yourself."
"What a sight, eh? I can't believe how many are involved now."
"Yeah, it's amazing. I can't tear myself away," she said with a laugh. "I've been at the house doing their washing. I'm waiting for it to dry."
Perfect weather for it.
"Yes, thank goodness. Have you heard from David today?"
"Not me personally, but Bob spoke to him late last night. They're planning to be back the day after tomorrow, hence the additional workforce."
"Do you think we might be able to go up to Whyalla tomorrow?"
She wanted to pick up the chandelier and sort out an outfit for the opening before Barbara and David got back, so she would be close at hand if needed.
"I suppose I can go on my own if I have to,"
Emily ventured.
Funny you should ask. I've finished here now, and I actually just got a call from Tom Green. He wants to do a final sign-off on the Civic Centre. I was waiting to ask you if tomorrow would suit.
"Great,"
Emily said, feeling relieved. She didn't want to be distracted when she saw Barbara and David. Thank goodness she wasn't needed on site at the cottage. Jake was constantly in contact with the trades and regularly assured her he had it all in hand. The windows and doors were going in today, or was it yesterday? After the plumbing and electrics had been done, the gyprockers would get to work and then the tilers. She was happy to leave it in his capable hands and see it when it had come together.
I'm going to head off, she said. The washing should be dry now. Oh, did you see the email from Simone, the one with the image of her painting?
Yes, it looks great, though a little small on the phone's screen.
Do you think it would work for the invitations? I'd really like to get them started.
Oh, I don't see why not, he said.
And I've also been thinking about the sign and the general branding, she added.
Me too. I'm thinking perhaps leave the button jar image off, if that's okay with you. Perhaps just have classic stylish lettering, but we can discuss it later.
Great minds think alike, I totally agree. I think using the jar might make us seem a bit quaint. I want to be taken seriously.
And you will be,
he said, leaning in and giving her a kiss.
We'll look at fonts later. Oh, I've got a few ideas.
Great. Thanks. See you later.
Emily drove off feeling buoyed. Things were good as long as she didn't let her mind dwell on Barbara and David's grief. For a few moments she'd even managed to forget her own pregnancy. Thinking about it now made her quiver with nervousness.
One thing at a time,
she told herself.
Washing in and folded, ironing done, and then home.
As soon as Jake got back that afternoon, he retreated to his office. When he emerged a few hours later for dinner, he had lots to share. He'd been speaking with Simone and had got her to agree to a deadline for the paintings.
Allowing a week for unforeseen circumstances, we can have the opening on June 25th, Jake said. Lucky we decided to put gas log fires in. We might need them.
Is it fair to put that sort of pressure on her? Emily asked. I didn't think creative people worked like that.
No idea, but she agreed. I'm sure if she had a problem, she would have said so.
I suppose.
Jake went on to say his graphic designer contact had agreed with keeping their branding simple and had suggested a font.
God, that was quick, Emily said. Perhaps we'll have 6 weeks for the invitations after all.
I phoned him with the brief as soon as you left. It was a piece of cake.
Jake laid a sheet of paper printed in the perfect cranberry colour on the table. It was plain and classic.
It looks good,
she said. But her voice must have betrayed her mood because Jake looked up sharply.
I'm not taking over too much, am I?
Emily couldn't lie. But she couldn't tell him the truth. She nibbled the inside of her cheek, unable to quite look at him.
I am. I've overstepped the mark, haven't I?
Emily cursed the heat starting to flow into her cheeks. What came to mind was to say, Well, it's my gallery and my business. What right do you have to discuss deadlines with my artist, even if she is your sister? But the words in her head sounded like the complaints of a petulant teenager, so she kept them to herself.
We're a team, Jake. I love that you have all these great contacts and experience, but I'd just prefer you talked to me before getting designs drawn up and bullying Simone into a deadline, that's all, she said.
I didn't bully Simone. She offered, he said.
But why were you discussing it in the first place?
To try and get some idea of a date for the opening.
His words started off defensively but petered out when he seemed to see Emily's point.
Which really wasn't my place, was it? He added sheepishly. I'm sorry, Em, I just want to help. It's not that I don't think you can do all this. I know you can, but I just think it's wise to use all the resources available. And I happen to be a very good resource. And now you're pregnant.
Don't worry about it. I appreciate your help, I really do. But I want to be involved too. When it's a success, I want to be able to say, look what I did, not look what Jake did for me. And if it all goes pear-shaped,
it won't. It's going to be a huge success. You're going to be a huge success. I'll back off, he said, raising his hands, and wait for you to come to me.
I don't want all or nothing, Jake, she said, thinking momentarily of Enid. I want us to be a team, to be sitting together writing lists and making decisions, like we did before you went off tractor driving, she added, suddenly realising that was when things had changed.
Fair enough. I suppose I did go a bit rogue on you. It's just that the only time I could contact people was during office hours, and I was so knackered at night.
I can always make calls and send emails, Emily said.
I know. Sorry. I'll do better from now on,
he said, offering her an innocent puppy dog look. You're forgiven. I'm probably just being needy and insecure. Emily kissed him and then finished dishing up their roast chicken and vegetables. Over dinner they discussed their trip up to Whyalla the following day and consulted the list Emily had prepared. It wasn't long, but everything on it was time-consuming. In addition to going to the party hire place and Karen's light shop, she wanted to get prices for business cards and stationery for when the design was finalised. Jake said he could get all that done in Melbourne and probably cheaper, but Emily wanted to do as much locally as she could. But the main thing bothering her was what to wear for the opening. She'd never really been much into fashion, preferring to be comfortable in jeans and a t-shirt, or an ironed shirt if she needed to be a little more dressed up. She felt daunted by the prospect of doing it alone, and with Barbara and Jake both unavailable, he'd be in a meeting for most of the afternoon to celebrate the conclusion of the project. She was jittery about the experience. She knew of women who would dedicate months and multiple big city shopping trips to the quest for the perfect outfit. Emily needed it dealt with in 2 hours, and in Whyalla. Chapter 34. Emily's eyes bugged when they walked into the huge warehouse filled with glassware, crockery, cutlery, balloons, streamers, and serviettes. On the wall, on an angled shelf, was a display of place settings in every colour imaginable. The choice was mind-boggling. As much as she wanted her opening to be classy, she was not remotely interested in ironing hundreds of linen napkins. If paper serviettes were good enough for the governor's visit the year before, they were good enough for her. We don't need plates either, Jake said, as they stood chatting out of earshot of the 2 staff members behind the counter. Let's just go with small paper serviettes. That's what they do at all the business functions I go to in Melbourne. I really don't want plastic glasses, Emily said. I know that means someone will have to wash them all, but I hate the idea of them ending up in landfill. Fair enough. It's a big dishwasher, so quite a few will fit in at a time, and they'll only need a quick cycle. Anyway, won't they wash them for you? In Melbourne, the hire places deliver them clean and pick them up dirty. We can ask. But I'm sure they'll be arriving on the bus or we'll be collecting them. And at the risk of sounding like my mother, I'd rather wash them myself and know they're clean for my guests. Okay, so that's settled. Proper glasses it is, Jake said. Crikey, have you seen the prices? Emily said, looking at the price list on the counter. Don't you go getting all freaked out on me now, Em. It'll be fine. As I'm sure your gran would say, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. You want to arrive with a bang, give people something to talk about. They still had to get prices for the catering. Oh, well, Emily kept telling herself, it was business, not just a lavish party for themselves. They took a heap of photos with Jake's mobile phone and decided they'd need more precise numbers before going any further. They didn't know how many would turn up from the ad they were putting in the paper. The staff assured them they didn't have any functions around their date, so there should be no problem with availability. Wow, I had no idea how much stuff there was to choose from and how expensive it is, Emily said, as they returned to the car. At least we don't need chairs or chair covers, Jake said. Yes, lucky that. Thank God we're not having a big white wedding, they both said at once, and then laughed. They got into the car and headed the rest of the way into the city centre. Emily's head was still spinning with confusion, indecision, and numbers when Jake parked the car in the Civic Centre car park and then kissed her goodbye before making his way across to the main building. Right, we're going to find something to wear, Emily told herself forcefully, picturing the blue-grey wraparound silky shirt-like top from her recurring dream. She knew being set on something so particular was dangerous, but hoped that having the same dream so many times was a good sign. She paused out the front of the first of the two boutiques on the now familiar shopping strip. The display was a sea of colour and seemed quite casual. She hoped they had a more formal section inside.
Fingers crossed,
she thought, taking a deep breath and pushing open the door. "Hello," the young lass behind the counter called brightly.
"Hi,"
Emily called back. She was friendly but couldn't quite muster the same level of enthusiasm. "Is there something I can help you with?"
"I hope so. I'm looking for quite a specific outfit for a semi-formal evening function."
She went on to describe it.
"Oh, that is specific. I can't remember seeing anything quite like that. And the colours we have right now are still a little summery, lighter. When is it for?" "Winter, end of June." "You might be better off waiting a couple of weeks until the winter stock is fully in. But let's have a look. Our more formal wear is over here," she said, leading Emily to the other side of the store. She flicked through the first rack, shaking her head. "No, nothing of that colour. Here's a wraparound dress in green," she said hopefully, holding it up. "Thanks, but not really me," Emily said. It was nice, but she had her heart set on the outfit of her dreams. Literally. They went through 2 whole racks. Despite telling herself to open her mind to other possibilities, Emily didn't see anything worth getting undressed for. If Barbara was there, she would have been more likely to try on and see. But her heart wasn't really in it. The girl was still smiling and showing as much patience as when she had walked in. Goodness only knew how long ago, but it wasn't to be. "I'm really sorry," she finally said. "But that's all I have. There's another boutique down the street. Perhaps try there." Emily admired her tolerance. In her place, she probably would have thrown up her hands by now. God, who would work in retail and have to deal with the public day in, day out? You, Emily," her inner voice said. She almost laughed out loud. Christ, what am I getting myself into? At least with a gallery, it was more a case of what you see is what you get. She couldn't imagine a gallery client saying, "Oh, I like that, but do you have one with more blue in it, or a bit more red here or there?" "Thanks so much for your help anyway. You've been great," Emily said, but was somehow hesitant to leave. She so desperately wanted to get her outfit sorted with minimal palaver. "I'm just so sorry I couldn't help," the girl said. "I hope you find something. But if all else fails, you can't go wrong with a little black dress. This one would really suit you," she said, plucking one out of the rack and looking expectantly at her. Emily looked at it and ummed and ahed. It is nice, she thought, and the shape might look okay on me. It was in a stretchy fabric, so it wouldn't matter if she changed a bit in the next 2 months. The 3/4-length sleeves would hide her not-so-lean arms. She should probably put the blue-grey out of her mind. Nothing like that colour seemed to be in at the moment. "Good idea," she said. "I'll try it on." She offered the girl a grateful smile and headed into the change room just behind her. The patient lass was not so patient when waiting for someone to get out of one outfit and into another. Twice she inquired if everything was okay in there, and twice Emily called back breathlessly that it was. Damn dressing to be warm, she thought, as she struggled with her 3 layers. She hadn't considered how long dressing and undressing would take. Finally, she dragged the stretchy black dress over her head and pulled it down and into place. She looked in the mirror and thought it fitted her curvy shape rather well, but she still couldn't get enthusiastic. Every second woman would be in a little black dress. She was the host, for goodness sake. She'd wanted to look much more striking than ordinary. Oh, well, better than nothing, Emily thought, as she stepped out of the change room and did a twirl in front of the girl. It would work as a fallback if she didn't find anything else. At least being disappointed was better than being stressed over having nothing to wear. "Oh, it's perfect on you! I knew it!" the girl cried. "Do you want to try on any others now you're undressed?"
she called, as Emily wrestled the clingy garment back over her head. Thanks, but I don't think so, she called back when she had finally extricated herself. She emerged redressed in her jeans and multiple layers and boots and put the dress on the counter. Would you be able to hold this for an hour or so? I really want to check the other shop before deciding. We do have a full refund policy even if you simply change your mind. You could take it now and then return it if you find something you like better. It's entirely up to you, though. Oh, that's very good of you. That would be great. Thanks so much. Emily left the shop with her purchase. She was tired but relieved she had found something she liked. Her legs were heavy as she moved down the street to the second boutique. She paused in front of the window display, which suggested the shop was targeting an older clientele. And again, none of the colours looked anything like what she was looking for. But she was there now, so she pushed the heavy glass door open and walked in. "Good morning," called a short, rotund, slightly past middle-aged woman with perfectly coiffed grey-rinsed hair. "Hello," Emily replied, as the door closed behind her with a thud. The atmosphere in here was totally different to the previous shop, not nearly as warm and friendly. Emily almost turned and walked out, but, not wanting to appear rude, started on a circuit of the store. Again, the colour she wanted was nowhere in sight. "Is there a special occasion you're shopping for?" the lady asked. "Yes, a cocktail party for a new gallery that's opening." "Now where's that, then?" "Sorry? Oh, down near Wattle Creek," Emily said, taken by surprise at the woman's inquisitiveness. "Oh, I haven't caught up with that yet. I do hope I get an invitation. I know a few people down that way." Emily remembered the conversation she'd had with Jake about spreading the word as far and as wide as possible. "The opening is the 25th of June, she said. "It's called the Button Jar. I'll send you an invite if you like." "That would be wonderful. My name's Mavis," the woman said, holding out her hand, which Emily accepted. "Thank you. I'll look forward to it. Now let's find you a wonderful outfit. You have a gorgeous figure," she said, eyeing Emily up and down. Being looked at like that, the way Enid did all the time, made Emily bristle, but she swallowed it down, reminding herself that Mavis was only trying to help her find an outfit that would look good on her. "Would you, by any chance, have anything in blue-grey?" she asked. "This is probably the closest thing I have," Mavis said, selecting and then holding up a lace dress in almost the exact colour of the top in Emily's dream. Her heart surged for a moment. At least the colour existed, but the dress wasn't right. "The colour works well on you, but the dress is really a bit too mother of the bride, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, I don't have anything else in that colour. How about this burgundy one?" Mavis offered, putting the dress back and holding up another. "No, I don't think so, thanks all the same. It's a bit too similar to what we've chosen as our main business colour." Was that the right way of putting it? Jake kept calling it their corporate colour, but Emily thought that sold the business as being bigger than it actually was. "Right. Well, you don't want to feel like you're in uniform, do you?" "No, exactly." She was warming to Mavis. The lady was a little brusque, but seemed to know about dressing people for specific occasions, and, like the younger woman in the previous shop, was very patient. "You know, you can never go wrong with black. Always classy and always appropriate," Mavis offered, holding up a sleeveless dress. "I actually just bought a black dress up the street," Emily offered with a grimace, indicating the bag in her hand. "As a fallback." "Can I see?" How awkward is this? She couldn't exactly refuse to show her. "Okay." She drew the dress out and held it up. "Perfect choice. I bet the nipped-in waist looks great on you. And the longer sleeve will keep you warm if it's a cold night." Emily sighed with relief. "Thanks so much for saying so. I really wanted something in blue-grey because I know it's silly, but I saw it in a dream." "That's not silly at all. Dreams are interesting things. I'm just sorry I don't have your dream outfit for you. New stock comes in regularly, so pop in if you're up again before the event.
I will. Thanks so much for your help anyway. I better get going,
she said, stuffing the dress back into the brightly coloured carry bag. Here's my card, and I'm serious, I'd love to come along to your opening if you've got space on the guest list.
Okay, great. I hope to see you there.
Hey there,
Jake said, startling Emily, who had managed to become engrossed in the novel she'd picked up in the newsagent.
How was the shopping?
Okay.
Are you okay? What are you doing here in the car?
After leaving the dress shop, Emily had eaten a quiche and salad for lunch and had returned to the car park to wait for Jake.
I'm fine, just feeling a bit weary and not really in the mood to shop. It's not the same without company,
Emily said.
Do you want me to come with you?
Thanks, but I sort of meant Barbara,
she replied apologetically.
I ended up with a black dress. It's nothing very special, but it'll do the trick,
she said with a shrug.
Sure you'll look gorgeous,
he said, leaning in and kissing her.
Are you sure you're all right?
Fine, maybe a bit moody. I'm missing Barbara and worrying about them too.
Fair enough. Let's just pick up the chandelier and be off then.
I'd rather not go in and see Karen if that's okay. I'm just not feeling sociable today. I'll see them at the opening if they come.
It's okay, Em. I understand. I'll go in myself.
Emily's strange mood couldn't be totally explained away by being concerned about Barbara and David. If she was honest, she was bitterly disappointed about not finding the outfit she'd seen in her dreams. She'd seen it as an omen. If she had walked in and found it hanging there right in front of her, then everything would have been okay. The business, the opening, Barbara and David and their friendship. But it hadn't been there, and maybe everything wouldn't be all right. Jake parked a few doors away from the lighting shop so Emily could remain unseen in the car. Within minutes he was back and had stowed the boxed chandelier on the back seat and wrapped a seatbelt around it to keep it secure. In bed that night, Jake swept Emily into a tight, comforting hug. He rubbed her belly gently and told her how much he was looking forward to seeing the first ultrasound pictures, whenever that was. He was clearly excited about it all. She was still terrified and trying to stay in denial. It was okay for men. They didn't have the yucky side of it all. The only yuck she had to deal with was cleaning up after the baby. If only Barbara was here to discuss it with, or she got along well enough with Enid. But she didn't, and she was dreading telling her mother of this new development. Hopefully Enid would prove to be one of those women who was thrilled at the idea of becoming a grandmother. She wasn't ready to face the alternative. Emily fell asleep in Jake's arms with the thought that she'd better go back to the doctor. It was important to know how far along she was, and there was no doubt a heap of other stuff she would find out, like what the next steps were and what to expect going forward. She hoped soon she would start feeling better about it all. It wasn't that she felt bad about being pregnant, but she was afraid. She was always apologizing to her belly, silently and out loud, and berating herself for her ridiculousness. What was wrong with her? Pregnancy and birth was a natural, normal phenomenon. Millions of women went through it every year, and the majority of them were ecstatic about it. So why not me? Chapter 35. The following day, Emily pottered around the house trying to pretend she wasn't just waiting for a call from Barbara. Jake spent most of the morning in the office sending images back and forth to the graphic designer and being careful to keep her in the loop. By that afternoon, the invitations, branding for the stationery and outdoor signage were set, and with the press of a button, Jake put the order in. In the end, they had decided to get it all done through the place in Melbourne that he knew and trusted. Emily hadn't been over to the cottage since she'd taken Simone through. She'd liked Jake's suggestions of tiles and fixtures and fittings which he'd used before, and had been happy to be spared from having to choose. They had similar taste. Both liked to keep things simple, neutral and elegant and leave any jazzing up to soft furnishings and other temporary items. It was all running much smoother and quicker than she'd ever have imagined. And while she was keen to see how things were progressing, She also wanted to wait and get the full experience of seeing the chandelier in situ after opening the gorgeous glossy front door, just as visitors to the gallery would. The painters were just finishing up outside and would come back and do the inside later. They had already done the highlights on the external woodwork in the rich garnet shade that Emily and Jake had chosen as their brand colour. White crushed limestone and quartz rubble had been laid out the front, so there was no chance of the car park area becoming boggy when it got really wet. They'd tossed around ideas for low-maintenance landscaping, but had decided to leave it for the time being. Later they might add a pair of pots with camellias on either side of the front door. At present, it looked more like a commercial building than a domestic home, and it tied in well with their branding vision. Simple, classic, high quality. Around 3 o'clock, Jake came in and said he'd just had a call. David and Barbara had arrived home safely. They were absolutely blown away to find that their seeding had been done.
Oh, good. I'm sure it's a huge weight off their minds. And now David can focus on taking care of Barbara.
Yeah. He got a bit emotional on the phone, poor bloke. He said Barbara asked him to pass on her thanks for all the food and for doing their washing.
Emily felt a little hurt that Barbara hadn't called herself, but then she caught herself. This wasn't about her. Barbara needed to do what was right for her, and if that meant not phoning Emily yet, well, that was fine. She forced herself to admit that maybe, just maybe, she'd done an Enid. That some of the things she'd done were in part in order to be thanked and therefore get some attention in a situation where she was feeling helpless and left out. Oh, God. I'm sure she'll contact you when she feels up to it, Jake continued, obviously catching the disappointment in her eyes. It was more than that. She wanted to share her dear friend's pain, ease it, and take some of the burden. Not that there was really any way she could. She couldn't begin to know what they were going through. But she wanted the opportunity to learn, to help in a more emotional sense. She really does appreciate all you've done, Em, Jake persisted. As does David.
Did he say how she is?
She asked.
No, but I think she was nearby when he made the call. I get the feeling he doesn't want her out of his sight.
I could look after her, sit with her. She wouldn't have to say a word,
Emily thought.
Probably a good idea,
she said, instead of voicing her thoughts.
How's everything over at the cottage?
She asked, changing the subject.
Great. All on track. Soon we'll be able to start making it look lived in. Well, you know what I mean,
he said, laughing. Emily nodded. She was still so impressed with how quickly it had all come together. She should be beside herself with excitement, but all she could think about was Barbara. What right do I have to be pleased and proud as punch with our dream when they've lost theirs? She put a protective hand over her tummy.
How's it all going down there?
Jake asked, nodding at her stomach.
So far, so good. The morning sickness seems to have gone for now. Touch wood,
she said, putting both hands on the table.
Must have been the little one just trying to get my attention,
she added with a laugh.
Well, it worked. Should we be getting books and swatting up on what to expect? Jake asked.
Honestly, I think I'd rather not know too much,
Emily said.
Okay, but don't think I won't be Googling like crazy on your behalf. When do you think we should tell your parents?
I think it's normal to wait until the 3-month mark. I don't even know yet when I'm due. We need to know that first. Then we can give them a date. It also means we can wait until after the gallery opening.
Good point.
Maybe we should let Enid get over the engagement before dropping another bombshell.
What she really meant was that she was keen to put off the announcement for as long as possible. Maybe before too long she'd figure out how to tell her, and be strong enough to deal with the backlash if it came.
I don't mind waiting, but they'll have to know before anyone else. It's only right.
Jake and Emily were still in bed at 8:30 on Monday morning when the phone rang. With seeding finished, so little left to do on the cottage, and the business side of things pretty much taken care of, they had decided to have a lie-in. They'd be run off their feet again soon enough. They had just made love and were catching their breath and luxuriating in the feeling of closeness. Jake extricated himself from Emily's embrace and leant over to pick up the phone handset.
"Hello,"
he said. He looked at Emily.
"Oh, hi, Barb. How you doing?"
"Yes, she's here. I'll put her on." He handed the phone to Emily, who was now sitting up. Her heart started to race.
God, what do you say to a friend who has just lost her baby?
Hi, Barbara. Welcome home.
She was disappointed with how inane she sounded, how normal, but it was the best she could do.
Thanks so much for all you did,
Barbara said.
It was nothing. I wanted to do something for you and...
She stopped herself, started again.
You're my best friend, Barbara. If there's anything I can do, anything at all, you only have to ask. Actually, there is one thing,
Barbara said quietly.
Yes?
Can you come out this morning for a cuppa? I need some human company. And some help to eat all the cake and biscuits. The last comment was probably meant to be an attempt at humour, but Barbara's voice remained tight and flat. She sounded so low. Emily's heart ached for her. She so badly wanted to make it better, but knew she couldn't. Barbara and David would never be the same again, but hopefully they would regain their humour and easygoing personalities. It would take time.
When?
Any time. I couldn't sleep last night. I've been up since 5.
Oh, you poor thing. I'll get changed and then come on out.
Thanks, Em.
You're welcome. See you soon.
Barbara hung up without another word. Emily stared at the handset, a mix of different emotions surging through her.
That's good,
Jake said.
Yeah.
Emily had been waiting for this, wanting it so desperately for 2 days, but even so, she felt nervous and apprehensive.
What if I say the wrong thing? I could upset her even more. I told her everything would be fine, remember, and look how that turned out.
So did I, to David. Friends reassure, it's part of the job description. We couldn't have known, they know that. You'll be fine, Jake said.
He rolled over and drew her back down onto the bed towards him.
You don't need to worry. You're best friends. The right words will come to you, and if they don't, it won't matter. Just be yourself,
he said, giving her a gentle kiss on the nose. Emily was quivering inside when she parked just below Barbara's veranda. The door opened before she had a chance to knock. Sasha and Grace pushed past Barbara and into the house. Emily thought to call them back, but was too taken aback by her friend's appearance. Barbara looked like she'd lost 5 kilos in the past week. Was that even possible? Her track pants and wind cheater hung loose on her long, lean frame. Her attire was as much a shock as her limp hair, pale complexion, and sunken, red-rimmed eyes with dark shadows beneath.
Oh, Barb,
she said. As she enveloped her friend, she was further startled by the boniness of Barbara's shoulders.
I'm so sorry.
I know. Thanks for coming, Barbara said, and they dissolved into tears. They held each other tightly, both sobbing and ignoring the cold breeze rushing around them from the open front door. Barbara's shoulders shook violently. When Emily thought her friend couldn't possibly have any more tears left to shed, a new, gentler burst started. Finally, the shuddering subsided. Emily pushed the door shut with one hand whilst keeping her other arm around her friend.
Come in and sit,
she said, ushering Barbara into the lounge room a few steps away. Sasha and Grace were already sprawled out across one of the 2 long lounges. Emily looked apologetically at Barbara, whose face showed the faint signs of a smile.
Come on, you two, off,
Emily commanded. The dogs obeyed, looking chastised, and promptly curled up on the carpeted floor.
Sorry,
she said.
I couldn't bring myself to leave Sasha outside at our place. David said it would be okay. Actually, he said worse things happen at sea. That's his way of saying it's okay,
Barbara said, smiling weakly. Every time Emily looked at her friend, she was stunned all over again at her appearance. And every time her heart lurched and took on a whole new level of ache. "You sit," Emily commanded. "I'll get us a cuppa. Tea or coffee?"
"Coffee, thanks."
Barbara didn't look like she had the strength to walk 2 more steps, let alone go to the kitchen and back. Emily reluctantly left, hoping the dogs would stay with Barbara. As quickly as she could, she prepared a tray of biscuits, cake, and mugs of coffee for Barbara and tea for herself, and made her way back down the central hall to the lounge. She hesitated at the door, unsure of what she might find. But what she saw wasn't what she expected. There sat Barbara with Grace curled up on the floor below, and Sasha in her lap, her arms wrapped around the larger, older dog, and her face buried in her fur.
"Here we are,"
Emily said, putting the tray down on the coffee table.
"Yours is the blue mug."
Barbara looked up, 2 fresh streaks of tears evident on her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away with her sleeve before reaching for a biscuit and a steaming mug.
"Thanks for this,"
Barbara said.
"There's no need to thank me,"
Emily said. Sasha had moved off Barbara when she had leant forward to reach the coffee table. Now she curled up next to her. Emily sat on the other couch and Grace stayed on the floor. The air was thick with unasked questions and raw emotion being held at bay. There was so much Emily wanted to know, but she wanted to give Barbara the space to make the first move. All the moves, really. It took almost an hour, 2 cups of coffee, 1 piece of buttered date loaf and 2 melting moment biscuits, but she waited her out. At least she's eating something.
"Oh, I feel so sad,"
Barbara finally said, her lip beginning to quiver again. In the time it took Emily to put down her almost empty cup, get onto the couch and draw her friend to her, the tears had already begun cascading down Barbara's face and were dripping off her chin and staining her wind cheater. She began to cry again in sympathy.
"I cry all the time,"
Barbara said into Emily's hair.
"Of course you do,"
Emily said quietly, as she stroked her friend's hair and back.
"It's okay. You need to grieve." "But when will the tears stop?" "When they stop." "My whole soul aches." "Of course it does. I just wish there was something I could do to make the pain go away," Emily said. "I feel like my heart is being broken. Literally. It hurts so much,"
she said, erupting into a new, stronger bout of sobbing.
"It is, Barbara. Your heart is being broken. It's going to take time. Oh, Barb, I'm so sorry you have to go through this."
Emily's gentle crying became sobbing, the intensity of which almost matched Barbara's. The 2 friends clung together, tears pouring from their eyes, their bodies shuddering, their hearts aching painfully.
"I don't want another baby,"
Barbara said suddenly when the tears had slowed. Emily thought about her own baby sitting between them and felt a stab of guilt so great she actually gasped.
"It's too soon to think about anything like that. I just can't go through this again. It would kill me."
Emily nodded. She could believe it. At that moment, she believed a person really could die from a broken heart.
"Did you see a counsellor?" "Yes,"
Barbara said, nodding.
"Really, they can't know exactly what you're feeling or going through. They can say what their books tell them to, but they can't really know, can they?"
"Probably not," Emily said.
"I don't know."
She suspected that many grief counsellors went into the profession to help others after surviving their own ordeals, But she wasn't going to go down that path. This was all about Barbara. Whatever she needed, whatever she wanted to hear. It was all so raw. She wasn't anywhere near thinking rationally yet. They sat in silence for a few minutes until Barbara broke it again.
We called him Albert, after David's father. His middle name.
Emily was so taken by surprise that for a moment she had trouble figuring out what Barbara was talking about. Oh, the baby. It was a boy.
That's a nice name,
she said lamely.
Albert Joseph.
Emily nodded and watched Barbara fiddling with a wet ball of tissues in her lap. She should go to the kitchen and get the box, could have kicked herself for not bringing it in earlier, but didn't want to leave in case Barbara wanted to say more. It was agony to hear these details. How much harder must it be for Barbara to utter them? The tears welled up again, and she worked to force them back down. She thought about how often people use the throwaway line, "build a bridge and get over it." In her own limited experience with grief, and she included her failed marriage on her list, she had come to see that you never really got over it. You got through it. Somehow you got to a point where the grief was there, but it didn't affect you quite so much, didn't consume your every waking moment. You were changed as a result of this experience that stayed with you like a barnacle attached to your heart and soul.
He looked so perfect,
Barbara continued.
Tiny, way too tiny, but 10 little fingers and toes. A little pursed mouth like David's.
Emily watched as tears filled Barbara's eyes again, and her chin began to quiver, and put her arms around her friend. The ache in her heart was so painful she found it difficult to breathe. She began to stroke Barbara's back.
Let it all out,
she cooed gently, as the sobbing became uncontrollable and Barbara's whole body began to shake again. She was fully aware of how cliched her words were, but she didn't know what else to say. Slowly the wretched sobbing and shuddering subsided. Barbara eventually sat back and blew her nose to signal that particular episode was over. Emily was prepared to sit here like this all day, and the next, if it would help. She suddenly wondered where David was, hoped that he wasn't hiding out alone in some metaphorical cave somewhere trying to do the macho thing. She thought he was a bit more in touch with his feelings than that, but there was no way of knowing exactly how this would affect him.
How's David doing?
Emily asked.
He's so wonderful,
Barbara said, and promptly burst into tears again. This time she shrugged and waved off Emily's attempts to comfort her, and the bout was short-lived. Progress, Emily thought, though she knew not to get her hopes up. Relapses were inevitable. This would be a long, slow process that could take weeks, months, or even years.
I couldn't ask for a better husband.
But how's he doing? Emily wanted to ask again as the silence rolled on.
I think he's doing better than me,
Barbara finally said.
Probably only because someone has to keep things together enough to make decisions. He'll probably crumble if I ever get my act together,
she said with a wan smile. Emily just looked on. She didn't know what to say.
Hey, thanks so much for doing all the cooking and the washing and everything,
Barbara said, abruptly changing the subject.
It made such a difference to not come home to how we left the place. I know it's weird, but it sort of meant that something had changed. If the dishes had still been there on the table, the milk spoiled, the rubbish stinking, I think that would have done me in.
Emily nodded.
Sorry I didn't wash the sheets,
she said with a shrug.
I thought you might like your bed being that bit more familiar after the hospital. I hope that was the right thing to do,
she added helplessly. Barbara nodded, her eyes glistening.
You were right. Oh, Em,
You're such a good friend. I don't know what I would do without you," she said, and reached out for Emily as a new flood of tears erupted. Again they held each other tightly. "And you're the best friend I could ever hope for," Emily said through her own sobs as she rubbed her friend's back. Slowly the episode ended and they parted again to wipe away their tears and blow their noses. "Look what we've been through this past year," Barbara said. "What a fine pair we are," she added with a faint smile. "What I've been through by no way compares to what you have," Emily thought. "Thank God we've got each other." They clasped hands and held on tightly as they looked at each other through sodden lashes. Emily knew she would be forever grateful for having met Barbara when she did. Thinking about it again now made her want to shed tears for herself, but thankfully none came. Could you actually run out of tears? "I'm exhausted," Barbara suddenly said. "Would you mind if I went and had a lie down?" "Of course not. Do you want me to wait for David? Will he be back soon?" "He should be. I'll be fine, though. Thanks so much for coming." Emily watched as Barbara got up shakily. She rose in case she needed help. The women hugged briefly, and Emily was shocked all over again at how frail Barbara was. "Do you need a hand?" she said, when it looked like Barbara might overbalance on her way to the door. "Thanks, but I'll be fine," Barbara said, her hand on the doorframe. She left the room with Sasha, leaving Emily feeling helpless all over again. Somehow Grace knew to stay beside her mistress. She was grateful for the dog's loyalty. She took the tray back to the kitchen, thought about leaving the mugs in the sink so the noise of washing them wouldn't bother Barbara, but decided not to leave work for David. And anyway, she needed to do something while she waited for him. No matter what Barbara said, there was no way she was leaving her alone. As she ran some water into the sink, she doubted Barbara would actually go to sleep, but a rest would at least help. Crying really is exhausting. She could actually use a catnap herself. Grace nudged her leg and she bent down to ruffle her ears. "I've been ignoring you, haven't I? Sorry, girl. Auntie Barbara needed all my attention," she explained in a whisper. "And I'm afraid she's going to need a lot more of it yet." Emily made sandwiches for Barbara and David's lunch and was just drying the cutting board and knife when David came in. She put her finger to her lips. "She's having a lie down," she whispered, as they hugged tightly. "Thanks so much for everything," David said. He was clearly exhausted, but didn't seem as bad as Barbara. When would he crumble? No idea. But Jake and I will be there if and when he does. "My pleasure," she said, smiling wanly at him. "Having the crop in is certainly a weight off my mind," he said. Emily nodded, unsure of what to say. "I'll head off now you're here," she said. "I just didn't want to leave Barbara on her own." "Thanks. It's been good to get out of the house for a bit. Can you just wait a minute while I check on her?" he said. "Of course. No problem." He made his way slowly from the room, standing a lot less tall and straight than usual. Carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, Gran would have said. David re-entered a few moments later. "She's asleep with Sasha curled up beside her," he said with a hint of a smile. "Sorry about that," Emily said, cringing. "Don't be. I don't mind, honestly. If having Sasha there will help Barbara get some sleep and feel a little better, then it's a small price to pay," he said. "There are some egg sandwiches in the fridge if you haven't had lunch. I made them while I was waiting." "Thanks, Em. You're the best," David said, and wrapped his arms around her. They held on tight for a few moments before both drew apart slowly at the same time.
You take care, Emily said, gathering up her handbag from the floor.
I'll see you out.
There's no need, David, really, she said, and made her way out and down the hall, being careful to tread quietly. Emily hoped the heavy ache within her would ease with the closing of the front door, but it didn't. It stayed like a hand clenched around her heart, as did the lump in the back of her throat. Chapter 36. Emily stopped at the mailboxes at the crossroad just outside David and Barbara's driveway and looked left and right, checking for traffic. Without consciously making the decision, she found herself turning left towards John's parents' house instead of right towards the bitumen to go home. She drove in a daze, just like she had the last time she'd come out to see them, the day before his funeral. And here she was again, arriving at their beautiful home unannounced, dishevelled, and empty-handed. She didn't even really know why she was there, except that she felt compelled to be. Emily briefly checked herself in the mirror before getting out of the car. She looked a wreck, just like last time. At least she was dressed a little better. And not wearing makeup meant no streaks of mascara or panda eyes.
Gracie, you just wait here. There's a good girl.
The front door opened before she had a chance to knock. There before her stood the impeccably presented Thora Stratton in navy slacks and a navy and white lightweight knitted jumper. A strand of pearls hung just below her throat.
Emily, what a lovely surprise,
Thora said, enveloping her in a warm hug. Emily didn't want to let go, wanted to stand there drawing in Thora's strength.
It's so nice to see you. Come in,
Thora said, releasing her. Emily entered the house, having still not said a word.
Gerald, dear, Emily's come to visit.
Thora ushered her into the lounge room. She heard Gerald's footsteps in the hallway, and when he entered the room she was surprised at how much older he looked since the last time she'd seen him. He was stooped and his shoulders a little rounded. She felt bad for not keeping in touch better.
"Dear girl, wonderful to see you,"
he said, clutching her to him and holding her tight for a moment before letting her go.
"Can I get you a tea or coffee?"
Tea would be lovely, thank you.
"Thora, darling."
Coffee, thank you, Gerald. And butter some of the Jubilee cake and bring it in, there's a dear.
"Right. Very good. You sit and catch up on your girly talk, and I'll be back soon."
Emily sat back into the leather sofa, feeling totally at ease. On the few times she'd sat here during her time with John, she'd been so uptight, almost afraid of them. She really wished she hadn't let John's relationship with his parents influence her view of them for so long. They weren't at all what he'd made them out to be. But she mustn't dwell. Things were different now, better.
Have you been to see Barbara Burton?
Emily nodded.
How is she? How are they doing? I was so sad to hear their news. Poor things. I think she's doing as well as can be expected.
She cursed her words. She sounded so cold and robotic, just like Enid.
It's early days,
she added with a shrug.
There I go again.
Thankfully, they have your friendship.
I feel a bit helpless, to be honest.
I'm sure just knowing you're able to be called upon is a huge comfort.
Thora, I'm really sorry I haven't been in touch properly since.
Oh, Emily, I didn't say that to make you feel guilty. You have nothing to feel guilty about. We're fine. I've thrown myself into CWA, the Rose Club, and a few other bits and pieces. Gerald is still pottering about the farm and talking about selling up. You've been busy too. We drove past the other week and saw the big building project, didn't we, Gerald? She said, as he entered the room carrying a tray.
"Sorry?"
I was just saying we saw Emily's house being built.
"Oh, yes, marvellous."
You should have stopped in.
We didn't want to disturb you.
I would have loved to see you. Promise me you will stop in next time. It's an open invitation.
Emily took a sip of tea.
Speaking of invitations, It's going to be an art gallery, the building that is. I'd like you both to come to the opening. It's June 25th from 7 o'clock. You'll get an invitation when they're sent out.
Oh, how lovely. I'm so pleased you're building a future down there. It would have been quite difficult returning to somewhere you weren't entirely happy.
There's something you should know so you don't hear it from someone else. It's all happened rather fast,
Emily said, colouring. She picked up her mug to hide it and took another sip. You've met a new man, Gerald said.
Yes,
she said, only just managing not to spit out her tea in surprise. And he's quite lovely and very dishy by all accounts, Thora said, raising her eyebrows and grinning a little cheekily.
I should have... I'm so sorry you...
Emily said, blushing furiously. She still found it mind-boggling that they had apparently not known that she and John had split up, despite their separation being the talk of the town for a couple of weeks. Nonsense. You owe us nothing, Emily. We're very pleased to see you getting on with your life and being happy, especially after what John put you through, aren't we, Gerald? We most certainly are, Gerald said.
I really appreciate you being so understanding. It must be hard for you, too, to hear.
Don't worry about us. We're all grown-ups. Have some cake.
Thank you,
Emily said, taking a slice from the offered plate. So, tell us about this young fellow, Gerald said.
Jake is his name. He's an architect and builder from Melbourne. He specialises in sympathetic renovations, merging the old with the new. It was his idea to rebuild the cottage. He's hoping there might be demand for his work locally. The building is going to be a gallery, and it's also going to double as a display home advertisement.
Sounds like a very good idea. I'm sure people will welcome him with open arms.
Oh, and I see you're engaged, Thora said, reaching for Emily's hand. How exciting! May I see the ring? Emily was a little startled. She had no idea she'd been fiddling with her ring, but now she realised she had. Why didn't I take that off and put it in my pocket?
Yes, of course. It's all happened rather fast,
she said, embarrassed, holding her hand out for inspection. Oh, it's just gorgeous. Love doesn't run to schedules, dear, so don't you worry about how it will look. What's important is that you're happy. And you are. You're practically glowing. Being engaged really suits you. Emily looked down and fiddled with the handle of her mug, shifted in her seat.
Except it's not just being engaged, is it?
She let out a little sigh and shook her head slowly.
You are, aren't you?
Pregnant, that is. Thora's eyes were wide.
Yes, but please don't tell anyone. It's too soon.
I knew it, Thora said, clapping her hands. I wondered that the moment you walked in the door. I have a nose for these things, you see. Oh, that's wonderful news, and my lips are sealed. Hearty congratulations, on both counts, Gerald said. Emily nodded.
Thank you. It is wonderful news, isn't it?
Thora said, peering at her.
Yes.
She hesitated. But is something wrong with you, the baby?
No, we're both fine as far as I know, but to be totally honest, I'm terrified.
Of what? Excuse me, but I think that's my cue to leave, Gerald said, standing up.
Oh, please don't feel...
Emily started. I'll see you again soon. Visit any time. Emily got up to hug him and watched as he kissed his wife on the forehead and left the room. Don't mind him. He's just old-fashioned. Baby discussions are the domain of women. Now, you were about to tell me what you're frightened about.
Everything, really,
she said, shrugging helplessly, tears filling her eyes. You can't let yourself worry about what happened to Barbara and David Burton happening to you. I know. I'm trying not to think about it. That's not all that's bothering you, is it? No. I'm not unhappy about being pregnant, but I just don't feel gushy, maternal. She nodded. I have no doubt you'll be a wonderful mother. Motherhood comes in all shapes and sizes, Emily. I felt gushy from the moment I found out, but I know plenty of women who didn't feel much other than sick, worried and frightened until they saw the baby, and some who didn't ever feel the warm rush of gooey love. Oh, they loved their children all right, don't get me wrong, but they just didn't goo and gar. Nothing wrong with that. Perhaps you're worrying too much about what you're not feeling. Maybe you've been keeping yourself too busy. But you can't run away from your feelings forever, Emily. Trust me, I know. How far along are you? I'm not sure yet. Probably only a few weeks or a month. It wasn't actually planned. Probably best that it wasn't, dear. I'd say someone or something has taken that decision out of your hands, wouldn't you? Emily wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Thora sounded so like Gran. Jake is happy about it all, isn't he? Oh, yes. He'd probably be stocking up on onesies already if I let him. And he's kind and supportive of you. He's wonderful. I really am so lucky to have found him. Emily stopped herself abruptly. Well, then, you have nothing to worry about. Together you'll get the job done just fine. And how is Enid coping with all this? Thora asked in a concerned tone. Emily really nearly did laugh this time. Oh, you know her so well. She doesn't know yet. We're trying to stretch out the shocks. We've only just got engaged. I haven't even got around to putting an ad in the paper yet. And perhaps putting it off? Yes, guilty as charged. I know your mum can be a little standoffish and, well, holier than thou, but I haven't yet met a woman who isn't thrilled with the idea of being a grandmother. Although I have to concede there is a first time for everything. They exchanged a wan, conspiratorial smile before sipping their drinks. But on a serious note, Emily, if you ever need a de facto set of grandparents or extra babysitters, I hope you'll think of us. As you know, John was our only child, so we— Noticing tears in Thora's eyes, Emily reached out and put her hand over the older lady's. Thora, I'd be honoured if you and Gerald would be another set of grandparents to my baby. Jake's parents died when he was young. It would mean the world to us, she said, clutching Emily's hand with both of hers. We meant it when we said you would always be part of our family. And hearing you say that means the world to me, Thora, Emily said, with eyes awash. Oh, look at me, getting all weepy, Thora said, extracting a handkerchief from her pocket and blowing her nose. They chatted for a few more minutes before Emily made to leave. At the door, Thora held both Emily's hands and looked deep into her eyes. Remember, I'm here if you ever need me, Emily. Thank you, Thora. And if there's anything I can do for you and Gerald, you only have to ask. And please don't drive past again without dropping in, she added, smiling warmly. Emily drove away with a wave. She felt so much better after her visit. She was heavy with feelings of love and gratitude for Thora and Gerald, but lighter about the baby.
This is the end of CD 8. The book continues on CD 9. CD 9.
Chapter 37. In the week following, Emily rang Barbara every morning to see how she was, but she was wary of overcrowding her. It wasn't that she avoided her friend, she just left it to Barbara to ask her to spend time together. She didn't want the sudden attention to make her feel like a charity case. Given how little time they'd been spending together before all this happened, it might look very contrived. Besides, she had so much to do regarding the gallery opening, and didn't want Barbara sitting around feeling neglected. She thought life had to start getting back to as normal as possible as soon as possible, not that she was in any way qualified to make such an assessment. It was probably tough love, but she thought Barbara needed to learn to live with the grief and not bury it by filling her waking hours hanging out with her. If questioned deeply, however, Emily would have had to concede that her actions weren't solely motivated by Barbara's best interests. As long as she didn't spend too much time with her friend, she wouldn't accidentally reveal her pregnancy, which she was slowly starting to feel better about. Admitting her mixed feelings might be worse than actually revealing the pregnancy. She wanted to hold on to that news and her relationship with Barbara and David for as long as possible. She just didn't want to cause them any more pain. A big part of her knew it was absolutely ridiculous. Of course they would be happy for her and Jake, but she just couldn't shake the fear that it could damage their friendship. If the situation was reversed, she hoped she'd be pleased for her friends. Hurt and sad for herself and Jake, but happy for them. But there was no telling how they would react in their grief-stricken state. So she hoped that if she kept it to herself long enough, then they might be in a better place psychologically and therefore more inclined to accept it. That was her theory, anyway. Every now and then she wondered if it might be better to just sit Barbara and David down and tell them. But she wanted to get through the opening of the gallery first and didn't want to do it without her dear friends. After all, they had been instrumental in helping her get back on her feet all those months ago. Though really, would they be up to a big night out so soon? Getting dressed up, putting on a happy face, dealing with the expressions of sympathy? Emily had finally got around to booking her appointment to see the doctor, only to find she couldn't get in for another week. Flu seemed to have well and truly gripped Hope Springs, the receptionist told her. When she heard that, Emily wondered if it might be best to hold off for a while. She didn't want to expose her unborn baby to a room full of sick people. Wasn't the first ultrasound not until after 3 months, anyway? Surely she couldn't be any more than a month along. She'd been on the pill for years and had always heard that women were unlikely to get pregnant straight away after missing a few doses. No, she'd better get it over with while she had the time. The doctor had wanted her to return in a week for the results. Oh, well, she'd only be a few days late. Not the worst thing in the world, considering everything else that was going on. Soon she'd be enveloping invitations, recording RSVPs, keeping track of acceptances and declines, and sorting out the catering. She tried not to think about how it would be running the gallery with a baby in tow. "Cross that bridge when you come to it, dear," Gran had often said. No doubt Thora would say the same. Emily felt a little guilty about confiding in John's mother and not her own, but it wasn't as if she'd planned it. "So you're off to see the doctor this morning, right?" Jake said over breakfast one day.
Yes, 9 o'clock. I better get going.
Want me to come along?
Thanks, but there's no need. I think I know what's going to happen. He'll tell me that I'm definitely pregnant, probably hand me a leaflet on what to expect, and give me a referral for an ultrasound.
Well, if you're sure.
Totally.
She'd told him of her visit with Thora, and that she was determined to think better of things. A few moments later, the phone rang. The handset was nearer Jake, so he picked it up. Emily instinctively checked her watch. A little after 8. She had to leave at 8:30, 8:35 at the absolute latest to get there on time. Jake speaking. "Oh, hi, Barbara. Yeah, she's right here. I'll just put her on." He handed her the phone.
Hi, Barbara. How's things?
Emily asked.
Hi, Em. Doing a bit better this morning, thanks. That's good to hear. Yeah, but another day here and I won't be. Oh?
She raised her eyebrows at Jake.
I need to get out of the house. Do you have any plans today? Today? I don't have anything major on, she said, wincing. Can I come down and hang out? What time were you thinking?
She crossed her fingers. Hopefully I'll be back from the doctor in time.
Would 9 o'clock work?
Emily shot a stricken look at Jake.
Oh, sure, 9 o'clock would be fine.
Jake frowned back and she shrugged helplessly.
Great, thanks so much,
said Barbara.
No worries, I'll see you soon,
Emily said and hung up.
What are you doing?
Jake demanded.
I couldn't really say no to Barbara, Emily said. Not when she's made the first move to start coming out of her shell.
But what about your doctor's appointment? Couldn't you have told her to come over later? It's not like this is just a regular checkup.
I suppose, but it's done now. I can't exactly call her back now, can I? She'll want to know why.
I see your point, Jake said. Hey, he said after a few moments, why don't I just go on your behalf? I could get the blood test results and ask any questions you wanted to know.
There's no way they'd give out my information because of confidentiality, she said.
Maybe they would if I had written consent from you, he suggested. It's worth a try.
Would you mind?
Of course not. It's my child as well. This is the least I can do.
Well, I guess it's worth a shot. It's that or miss the appointment. They don't open until 9, so I can't cancel it now anyway. If they won't accept you as my proxy, then they can put the results in the post.
You write the note and I'll get changed, he said, getting up.
You're the best. Thanks, Jake.
Half an hour after Jake left, Emily heard the arrival of a car. Now there was less traffic coming and going for the building across the way, her ears were again tuned in to the sound of vehicles turning in off the dirt road out front. She went out to greet Barbara and was surprised to see David getting out of the driver's side. She was even more surprised when he opened the back door of the dual cab ute and Sasha emerged.
I don't want Barb driving at the moment, David said as he embraced Emily. She's a bit distracted.
He means I'm a basket case who can't be trusted behind the wheel, Barbara said, coming up beside them.
Oh, right, Emily said, feeling a little uncomfortable.
Probably best. I am a bit distracted, Barbara added. Yesterday I drove down to the end of the driveway to check the mail and ended up in Wattle Creek. See? Totally off the planet.
Emily relaxed slightly.
Hope you don't mind Sasha coming along, but we've become a bit attached. Not at all. Grace will be pleased to have the company.
Is Jake in?
David asked.
No, you just missed him. He had to pop over to Hope Springs,
Emily said. Maybe I'll head down there and see if I can catch up. I'll come and collect you in a few hours. You'll probably be ready for a lie down by then.
Thanks, darling,
Barbara said, and hugged her husband.
Have fun,
David called with a wave as he got back into the vehicle.
Here, this is a treat for later. Just bung it into the fridge,
Barbara said, handing Emily a brown paper bag.
Okay, thanks,
Emily said.
Isn't this nice? Just like old times,
Barbara said, as she linked arms with Emily and they walked up the path to the house. To Emily, it was nothing like old times. Part of her wished she'd put Barbara off in favour of the doctor. Once upon a time they could just be together without either of them making any effort, but it certainly didn't feel like that today. When she'd visited the other day, there was no pretense that things were normal. Now it all just felt awkward. Inside, the dogs had a quick reunion and then settled onto their mats while Emily put the kettle on. Emily only remembered then that she hadn't removed Sasha's bedding. They'd been so busy with the cottage. While she explained the progress over the past 2 weeks, Barbara was alternately excited and subdued. The two friends sipped tea amid long silences that regularly strayed into awkward.
So, come on, I'm dying to see the place,
Barbara said suddenly after they'd finished their tea. She got up.
Okay, just let me have a wee first.
Emily was finding her bladder capacity shrinking by the day. Recently, she'd been trotting off to the toilet almost half-hourly. She assumed it must be psychosomatic. Surely the baby was tiny. But telling herself that didn't make any difference.
As you can see, it's a lot bigger than a cottage, but we've never managed to stop calling it one,"
Emily said, as they made their way towards the building site.
"Oh, well, sounds better than the building or the house," Barbara said. "And there was a real little cottage there once, until a certain someone knocked it down."
"Yeah, don't remind me. I try not to think ill of the dead,"
Emily said.
"That's noble of you."
"Thanks, but really at the end of the day it was only bricks and mortar."
The words, "not a living, breathing person," hung unspoken in the chilly air around them. They traipsed on, both with hands thrust deep into pockets. The dogs bounded on ahead, Sasha struggling to keep up with Grace.
"I'm giving you the full experience,"
Emily said.
"Hence going the long way around."
They could have climbed over the fence and cut across the paddock, but instead they were going up to the official driveway.
"Sorry for the extra walk."
"Don't be. I've been sitting around like a blob for too long. Some exercise will do me good," Barbara said. "And I'm not sure I could climb a fence at the moment."
They paused at the edge of the road to take in the scene. The sun glinted off the galvanized iron roof and verandas, and the pale stonework and creamy mortar was lit up in streaks where clear laser light sheets had been used above the windows to help light the rooms inside. Even though she'd seen it plenty of times, Emily still felt a little awestruck. The sun was at a perfect angle and was shining brightly.
"It looks brilliant,"
Barbara said.
"Thanks. It's come up well."
"It still looks very much like the old one, only better. More complete with its veranda."
"I hope so. It's a lot different inside,"
Emily said.
"So it should be. The previous incarnation was practically derelict. And it'll be nice to see it without all the pigeon poo,"
Barbara declared. Emily was pleased to get a glimpse of her dear friend's sense of humour. She smiled to herself as she thought, "She'll come back. She'll be okay." She could see that now.
"Oh no, we kept that for posterity. You know how sentimental I am."
"Still attached to a sample of old floorboards, I hope."
"Yes, we've sent it off to be gold-plated. It's going to hang above the fireplace behind my desk,"
Emily said, grinning and playing along.
"But seriously, we were thinking of landscaping out the front,"
she explained, as they walked off the road and started across the large white rubble and gravel parking area.
"But we couldn't decide what to do."
"I like it like this. It looks like a real business. You don't want it looking too domestic. And you need plenty of parking for all those visitors you're going to get."
"I hope so,"
Emily said, smiling at her friend.
"It's going to be a huge success."
Emily could see how hard Barbara was working to put on a happy face. She just hoped the facade wouldn't crumble from all the effort.
"Love the colour of the door and the timber highlights," Barbara said. "Not too brown, not too brick red or plum red. It's just right."
"It's garnet,"
Emily replied, glad that she had noticed.
"We've chosen it as our brand colour. I should have shown you when we were at the house. Remind me when we get back."
She inserted the key in the lock and threw open the door.
"Welcome to the Button Jar Gallery of Fine Art."
She took a moment to enjoy the way the name rolled off her tongue.
"Wow,"
Barbara said, taking in the view for the first time.
"Is that polished concrete?"
"Yes, with chips of quartz and coloured stone in it. I was a bit sceptical to start with, but I love it now,"
Emily said.
"It's brilliant and will be a doddle to keep clean."
"I'll get a hall runner at some stage."
She flicked a switch and the chandelier lit up above them.
"That is totally gorgeous," Barbara said.
It was the first time Emily had seen it in all its glory. As rainbows from the Italian-cut crystal lit up the ceiling and walls, she thought it worth every cent. It was stunning.
"I want to get ottomans for people to sit on, but I haven't decided exactly what shape and fabric yet,"
Emily explained as they made their way through.
"We're leaving it empty for the opening, though."
All the rooms were bare except for the one at the back left that held Emily's desk and chair. She was surprised to see the desk in place, had in fact completely forgotten about it. Jake couldn't have moved it on his own. He must have got the electrician to help the other day when he was here. Each room had high picture rails for hanging the art on. It was one nice clean line rather than having hooks sticking out of the walls. Next, Emily opened the doors to the bathrooms and they peered in. Nice and clean in neutral tones, but nothing over the top, unlike the kitchen. This was the first time she'd seen it fully completed. It was perfect, just what Jake had described.
"What a gorgeous kitchen,"
Barbara said, running her hands over the stone bench top.
"I can't take any credit, really. It's all Jake,"
Emily said, walking over and running her hand across the chunky raised gas cooktop. She'd seen it in the pictures, but Emily would never have believed a kitchen appliance could actually look so handsome, so sexy. But it did. The cast-iron trivets, the gas ring below, all framed in sleek, shiny stainless steel. It was a work of art compared to the boring black coils and solid electric elements she'd used all her life. She was a little overawed. Finally, she unlocked the row of 5 glass cafe doors. They walked outside. A paved patio area held a stainless steel outdoor kitchen and a large timber table with bench seats.
"Gosh, you've thought of everything,"
Barbara said, looking around.
"Jake has,"
Emily corrected.
"I'm surprised you guys aren't going to move over here. I would." "Who knows what will happen,"
she replied with a shrug.
"But for now, it's definitely going to be a gallery. And a very successful one at that,"
Barbara added firmly.
"When is the grand opening?" "The evening of June 25th. It's a Saturday. It's going to be cocktails standing up, so make sure you wear comfy shoes,"
Emily warned.
"We're hoping for hordes of people."
"I'm sure you'll be swamped." Emily smiled.
"We're still waiting for the invitations to arrive from the printers. Otherwise, the two of us would have been stuffing envelopes and sticking stamps all day."
"I wouldn't have minded," Barbara said.
"It's good not to just be sitting around with my sadness shadowing me,"
she added quietly.
"I'm so glad I'm here."
Emily turned to her. There were tears welling in Barbara's eyes.
"I'm glad too. I've missed you."
They embraced, and then Emily held her friend by the arms.
"I know you might not want to talk about Albert,"
she said. Barbara's lip trembled.
"But if you do, whenever you do, I'm always here. I want you to know that it's okay to talk, if you want, and if you don't, that's fine too."
Barbara nodded, her eyes brimming with tears.
"Thanks,"
she said with a gulp. Emily smiled sadly at her friend before releasing her. It was chilly out of the sun and surrounded by stone, so they made their way back inside and she locked the doors behind them.
"I'm just going to test out the loo,"
she said, and headed to the toilet with her head down.
"Are you okay?"
Barbara asked, when Emily emerged a few minutes later.
"Yeah, fine,"
she said, avoiding eye contact.
"Twice to the loo in 1 hour?"
Barbara continued.
"Must be the cold weather,"
she replied, still unable to look Barbara in the eye. It had been the first thing that had come to mind. They walked slowly back to the main house, long silences again the norm.
"I fancy some cheese,"
Barbara declared when they were back inside.
"I'm afraid I've only got ordinary cheddar,"
Emily said apologetically.
"No, you don't,"
Barbara said with a mischievous glint. She went to Emily's fridge and brought the paper bag to the table. Emily retrieved a wooden chopping board from the open cupboard above the bench and put it on the table. She held her breath whilst hoping Barbara's selection didn't include anything soft. After her chat with Thora, she'd started swatting up online about pregnancy. She'd read that expectant women shouldn't eat soft, blue-veined or semi-soft cheeses like feta and ricotta. Apparently they were more prone to growing bacteria like listeria that was harmful to unborn babies.
"We picked these up in Whyalla on the way home,"
Barbara said, rubbing her hands together in anticipation.
"I've been craving soft cheese. I guess that's what happens when you deny yourself something. Avoiding cheese certainly didn't help me, though, did it?"
she added bitterly, as she extracted a box of water crackers from her handbag and put it on the table. Emily was without words. All she could do was offer her friend a sympathetic look. She focused on unwrapping the package of cheeses and then stood staring at the 4 packets, only one of which wasn't soft. Uh-oh.
Are you okay?
Barbara asked.
Yep, fine. Just got distracted for a moment,
Emily said, tearing her gaze away and moving to the utensil drawer to look for the cheese knife. Think, Emily, think, she told herself as she pretended to fossick through the assorted implements for the cheese knife, which was clearly visible at the front of the drawer right by her hand. She couldn't claim to be on a diet. Barbara knew she didn't believe in them. She couldn't claim to have gone off cheese because that would raise too many questions. Oh, God. Would it be easier just to eat the damned cheese? How great is the risk anyway? If only she'd got Jake to ask the doctor. But of course when he left she'd had no idea she'd be facing this dilemma an hour or so later. Shit. She felt like banging her head against the cupboard in frustration.
Just a normal knife will do,
Barbara said.
Got it,
Emily said, making a show of holding up the cheese knife as she shut the drawer. She reluctantly sat back down in front of the platter of unwrapped cheeses. Her mouth was watering. She handed the knife to Barbara.
Which one can I cut for you?
Barbara asked, knife poised.
Just a piece of the cheddar, thanks. What, no blue vein or double brie? No, thanks,
Emily said, shaking her head.
We had a big breakfast.
What's going on? Barbara asked, eyeing her warily.
Nothing,
Emily said, accepting the wedge of cheddar on a water cracker, but avoiding her friend's gaze.
Don't you dare tell me you're on a diet,
Barbara said. Emily shrugged.
There's something you're not telling me. What is it?
A sudden wave of nausea came over Emily and she bolted from the room like a rabbit in front of a pack of greyhounds. She made it to the toilet just in time. Barbara was staring at her when she re-entered the kitchen a minute later. Emily failed to hide a sheepish look.
What's wrong with you?
Barbara asked again. She sat back down.
Milk must have been off,
she lied, still feeling her friend's gaze.
But I had milk with my tea and I'm fine.
Emily looked up tentatively after Barbara had been silent for ages. Her friend's eyes were wide and still upon her.
You're pregnant, aren't you?
All Emily's resolve left her. She nodded slowly and then put her head in her hands on the table.
Oh my God, you're pregnant! I can't believe it,
Barbara said. And then,
but what's wrong? Aren't you happy? You're in a committed relationship. Why wouldn't you be happy?
She asked, clearly perplexed. Emily looked up with eyebrows raised in a knowing expression.
Oh, you're worried about upsetting me?
Barbara said. She put a hand over her mouth.
Oh, Barbara, I didn't know how to tell you,
she said, and burst into tears.
God, what sort of friend would I be if I couldn't be happy for you? It's so soon.
I'm sure you didn't plan it that way, Barbara said, smiling kindly at her friend.
So you're okay with this?
She wiped her nose.
Of course I am. Honestly, Em, I'm happy for you. Yes, I'm sad and bitterly disappointed for my own situation, but that doesn't mean I don't want good things for you. I love you. You're my dearest friend in the whole world. Oh, Barbara, Emily said. I've been tying myself in knots about how and when to tell you.
They got up together and hugged across the corner of the table.
I thought you'd be upset. I am upset, but not at you, silly, Barbara said. So when are you due?
She asked, when they were once again seated.
I'm not sure,
Emily said, wincing.
Oh, so not planned then? No, I'm so sorry.
Don't be, Em, please. Please don't pity me. I couldn't bear that. I'll just have to be the best auntie in the history of the universe. Emily nodded. Well, this changes everything, doesn't it? Emily was trying to figure out Barbara's tone when her friend reached for the cheese knife. Looks like I get to pig out on the creamy cheese all by myself, she said, offering Emily a wan smile. They spent another hour together. Whilst Emily was relieved that everything was out in the open, she still had the gnawing feeling that Barbara's ready acceptance of her pregnancy was the calm before the storm. She really hoped she was wrong. When David arrived back to pick Barbara up, they hugged goodbye. After Barbara and David had left, Emily paced around the kitchen for a few minutes. Where the hell was Jake? Why hadn't he come back around the same time as David? She couldn't settle. She wanted to walk off her angst, but was afraid he might return while she was gone. Finally, she heard the ute and raced out to meet him. She flung her arms around him as soon as he was out of the vehicle, almost unbalancing him.
Easy, Tiger, he said. What's up?
Tears filled Emily's eyes.
Oh, Jake, I'm so glad you're home.
What's wrong? It's not the baby, is it?
Emily shook her head.
I'm fine, but Barbara knows about the pregnancy.
Yeah, so does David, he said sheepishly.
You told him?
She didn't know whether to be annoyed or relieved.
He caught me coming out of the doctor's. It just sort of came out.
So how did he react?
He was fine. What about Barbara?
She was fine too.
So what are you so upset about? It's good that it's out in the open, and even better that they're okay with it.
But what if they're pretending?
Of course they're pretending, Em. They're putting on a brave front, but inside their hearts will be breaking all over again. They'll be wondering why we got pregnant at the drop of a hat when they struggled and why their baby was taken from them. Every time we talk about our child, it's going to remind them of what they have lost. But they will put all that aside to be happy for us because they are kind, considerate, and unselfish people, and because that's what good friends do.
I just feel so terrible,
Emily said.
I know. But they wouldn't want to take away from our happiness.
It's just not fair,
Emily wailed.
No, it's not. Life often isn't,
Jake said sagely.
But we have each other, and they have each other. We'll all get through this. In a way, I'm glad it came out now. Hopefully it means that the dust will settle sooner rather than later, he said. You know what them knowing means, though, don't you?
What?
Emily asked, genuinely baffled.
We have to tell your parents as soon as possible. It's really not fair other people knowing when they don't.
Oh, God. Tomorrow?
Tomorrow, but no later.
Emily remained silent, mulling it over for a few moments.
So how did Barbara find out anyway? Jake asked suddenly.
Cheese! Bloody cheese!
Emily said, throwing her hands up in the air and letting them drop. Jake frowned quizzically at her.
She brought us a treat since she can now eat soft cheese again,
Emily said, rolling her eyes and shaking her head in exasperation.
Oh, and now you can't,
Jake said, thinking aloud.
Exactly.
But I can, he said,
giving her a squeeze and leading her up the path and into the house. Chapter 38. All the way to Hope Springs, Emily talked with Jake about the project and launch of the business. But it did little to keep the tension at bay. How would Enid feel about the prospect of being a grandparent?
Don't worry about it. She'll be thrilled to be a granny,
Jake had said when Emily had voiced her concern the night before. Since then, she had kept her fears to herself. She did tend to catastrophize, but was doing her best to be more positive. Her life was pretty damn perfect, after all. A loving fiancé, an exciting new business venture, good friends. She was even starting to feel differently about her baby. After all, she had felt maternal about Grace from the instant she met her. How exciting would it be to meet someone who had been growing inside her belly for 9 months? At that moment, her relationship with her mother was the only thorn in her side. She really hoped Jake was right, that bonding over the baby might be a turning point in their relationship. She knew how important grandparents were, and she wanted her child to have the sort of relationship she'd had with hers. She's been through it all before, Emily. She might have a lot of good advice. And Des, he'd said. Emily had said. Des greeted them at the door and led them through to the kitchen. There was not a dish in sight, but Enid was at the sink with cloth in hand, wiping furiously. How much time could one woman possibly spend wiping the sink and bench tops?
Emily, Jake, lovely to see you both,
she said, going through the air-kissing ritual.
Who's for tea or coffee?
Des asked.
I've still got some bags of peppermint tea if you'd like, Em.
That would be lovely. Thanks, Dad.
Tea for me. White with one, thanks, Des, Jake said. Bring the biscuits too, Des.
What's this? Emily said, pulling out a chair at the table. In front of her was a neatly stacked pile of magazines, the top one being Australian Bride.
I thought when you saw the gorgeous cakes, dresses and flowers on offer, you might change your mind about not doing things properly.
Mum, I've already had my white wedding, and it was lovely. Besides, didn't you say it was ridiculous of Debbie Argus to wear ivory for her second marriage?
Oh, yes, but she was a much older bride.
Emily concentrated very hard on not rolling her eyes as she took her place. You really couldn't win with Enid.
Well, at least have a flick through.
Deciding to pick her battle elsewhere, Emily began thumbing through the magazine. There were some gorgeous dresses, floral arrangements, and amazing cakes, but she still didn't feel inspired to go down that path again.
Here we are,
Des said, delivering mugs to the table and then a biscuit tin.
On a plate, Desmond, not the shabby tin,
Enid said with a sigh.
Oh, never mind, it's here now. Jake, I hope you will forgive our poor manners. Now tell me, what are you wanting by way of food for the gallery opening?
Thanks, Mum, but we're having it catered.
Oh, by who?
Most likely the CWA. They're raising money for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. I'm sure they'll appreciate the opportunity.
Good idea. But you should get more than one quote. I could help if you like.
Emily wanted to defend her decision, but again chose to keep the peace. Enid had a valid point. She hadn't run it by Barbara yet. The idea had only just struck her, but she wondered if her friend might enjoy having something to organise or cook for to keep her mind off other things. She was helping Simone by launching her career. Perhaps she could in some small way help Barbara too. If not, there were plenty of others in the Wattle Creek CWA she could call on, like Thora.
So, everything is on track?
Des asked.
Yes, Jake said. It's been fantastic. There's really just the launch party to organise now. The invitations will be going out this week. It all sounds very exciting, Des said.
Emily wondered if Enid had her nose out of joint for not being part of the non-existent organising committee.
I popped in and saw Thora and Gerald Stratton,
she said, abruptly changing the subject.
Oh?
Enid said.
How are they doing?
Des asked.
I keep meaning to give Gerald a call.
They seem to be okay.
All very sad, Enid said. I must invite her for afternoon tea.
Yes,
Emily agreed.
Good idea. Mum, Dad, Jake and I have something to tell you,
she started, breaking the stretching silence. She gripped Jake's hand under the table. Here goes.
I'm pregnant.
Enid breathed in sharply. The air seemed to be sucked out of the room. Emily blushed. Jake squeezed her hand. Somewhere in the house a clock struck the hour. There seemed to be a collective holding of breath. Dong, 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 dong. She counted the chimes all the way to 10, trying to keep her nerves at bay, unable to quite believe everyone was still silent. It was excruciating. God, say something, someone. Please. Dad?
That's wonderful, dear. Congratulations, both of you,
Des said. He got up and pulled Emily into an embrace, then turned and shook Jake's hand. Then he hugged and slapped him on the back.
What lovely news.
Across the table, Enid remained seated. The blood had left her face.
Guess. They're not married. Well, I don't know about you, Enid, but I, for one, am very excited at the prospect of becoming a grandfather.
Thanks, Dad. It's come as a bit of a surprise.
But you're not married,
Enid said, apparently dumbfounded.
That's right, Mum. We're not married. You can get pregnant without a marriage certificate, you know.
Jake squeezed her hand again, no doubt as a warning.
But what will people think?
Enid was now blushing.
Who cares what they think? I've met a wonderful man who makes me happy. We're engaged, we're committed, and we're going to have a baby together. Can't you just be happy for us?
Of course I'm happy for you.
Well, it doesn't sound like it.
It's just, I don't know. It's just a bit of a shock. I just never thought,
God, Mum, why don't you ever give me a break? As usual, you're making it all about you. What will people think? Well, what about what I think?
Emily felt her heart start to race. She snatched her hand out of Jake's. Her voice went up an octave and a few decibels.
What about, darling, as long as you're happy? A good mother should want her child to be happy, but I don't think you care about my feelings at all. I don't think you ever have.
She was starting to feel out of control, like a freight train heading downhill without brakes. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed her father and Jake shifting in their chairs, but she blundered on.
Parents are supposed to love their children no matter what, but oh no, not you. All you do is criticize me and put me down.
Oh, Emily, don't be silly. You're being hysterical.
And of course you what? You've encouraged me? You've supported me? When? How? You orchestrated a reunion dinner to try and get me to go back to John, for Christ's sake. I was miserable with John. He was cruel, and you knew it.
Emily, language, Enid said. Marriage vows are important. You can't just give up when things get a little difficult.
A little difficult? He shot at my dog, Mum, for fun.
I'm sure he... What?
Had his reasons? What possible reason?
She took a breath, shaking with emotion.
You're right. It doesn't matter now. It's too late for you to show your support on that. Thankfully, I had Dad. But you've never encouraged me to be anything more than a wife and mother. Well, look, here I am, pregnant and engaged, fulfilling my duty, my great career path. And I still can't bloody win. I never will with you. I've wasted all these years and so much energy tying myself up in not seeking your approval. The truth is, you'll never approve of anything I do. You're cold, critical, and unsupportive. You're a bully, and I've had enough of it. If you don't want a grandchild, then John's parents will be happy to step into the breach.
And I suppose they've been told? Before your own parents?
She felt a stab of guilt.
Yes, as a matter of fact, they have. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. And despite losing their son, they were gracious enough to be happy for me and Jake. But that's not the point. The point is that you always make everything about you.
Whatever do you mean, Emily?
How do you think it feels to have... Oh, for fuck's sake! Are you serious? It's not about who knows first. It's not a competition. Jake and I are having a baby. Your first grandchild. And are you excited? Pleased for us? Oh, no. All you're thinking about is what people will think about me being unmarried and that someone might have heard before you.
It's the 21st century, not the 1960s. I'm sorry Thora and Gerald found out first, but it was an accident. And I'm sorry I continue to be such an embarrassment to you. But you know what? I no longer care. I'm glad you're not interested in your grandchild, because I don't want my child growing up feeling like I did. She leapt up. Come on, Jake, we're leaving, she said, and stormed towards the front door. They drove in silence as Emily played back the outburst in her head. It hadn't felt good to let her mother have it like that, but at least she'd got it off her chest. It had been a long time coming. After 10 minutes, she finally asked,
Aren't you going to say something?
I'm not sure what to say.
How about well done for standing up for yourself?
Jake considered that for a moment. You didn't stand up for yourself. You attacked your mother in front of all of us. It was cruel. It was embarrassing. And your poor father. Stunned, Emily looked at him and then turned towards the window. Tears welled. When they got home, Jake made no move to get out of the car. I'm going into town to check the mail. Emily stayed put. Emily, please. We'll discuss it later, but right now I'm too disappointed to even look at you.
Why?
She's your mother, Emily. You might not like some of the things she says and does, but she's the only one you've got.
Don't you dare play the "at least you've got a mother" card.
It's the truth. I'd give anything to have my mum to call or visit.
Well, you're welcome to Enid. I don't want any child of mine going through what I have, feeling like I have.
And I don't want my child not having a close relationship with their grandparents. So, we have a problem.
We certainly do,
Emily said.
And if you think I'm just going to fall on my sword and apologise after finally standing up for myself, you've got another think coming.
She ripped the door open, got out, and slammed it shut behind her. Chapter 39. Inside the house, Emily busied herself with baking a cake, hoping the noise of the beaters would distract her from her anger. She desperately wanted to phone Barbara and offload, but she was terrified that her friend might side with Jake. Is it possible that I went too far? No. She assured herself she was in the right, but she still didn't pick up the phone. Barbara had enough on her plate without being subjected to more of Emily's issues with her mother.
Oh, Gracie, Mummy's made a mess of things,
she said to the dog, who was lying on the floor nearby.
What should I do?
She was just putting the cake in the oven and wondering how to distract herself next when there was a knock at the door.
Coming,
she called. It was Des. Emily was shocked to see how haggard and stooped he looked. His face was a dreadful grey colour. Guilt stabbed under her ribs like a twisted knife.
Dad, come in,
she said, hugging him tightly.
I've just put a cake in the oven if you'd like to wait.
She was so relieved to see him, to feel she had an ally. She almost burst into tears.
I'm so sorry about before. I feel terrible that you had to hear that.
Des broke the embrace and looked at her solemnly. Darling, I've got your mother in the car.
Oh.
I've been sent as the advance party to check you are home, since we can't see the car.
Jake's gone off. He's upset with me.
Oh, dear.
Dad, if Mum's expecting an apology, she's going to be sorely disappointed. Whilst I regret losing my cool in front of you and Jake and embarrassing you, I stand behind what I said.
You don't owe her an apology, Em.
Thanks, Dad. I'd better put the kettle on.
When she turned back from filling the kettle, Enid was standing in the doorway.
Hello, Mum,
she said.
Emily?
Enid said stiffly and walked into the kitchen, bypassing the air-kissing ritual. Emily almost shuddered in response to Enid's glacial stare.
She could have sworn the temperature in the kitchen dropped 10 degrees.
Tea, coffee, something else?
Not for me, thank you, Enid said.
Coffee, thanks, sweetheart, Des said. Emily's heart thudded hard as she prepared the mugs and delivered them to the table, the silence only broken by the loud plastic tick of the wall clock. Mother and daughter faced each other on opposite sides of the table, with Des between them at the end.
"Don't you have something to say to me, Emily?"
Enid finally said. Emily tightened her grip on the handle of her mug, but said nothing.
"I think an apology is in order. And what exactly have I done that makes me such a bad mother?"
Des flashed Enid a look.
"Enid, we talked about this."
"No, Des, I want to know."
"I didn't say you were a bad mother, Mum,"
mumbled Emily.
"Well, it was certainly implied. You attacked me in front of Jake and your father. I'd like to know why you hate me so much."
"I don't hate you, Mum. I love you, but very often I don't like the way you treat me."
"And what is it that I have done?"
"I told you. You're not encouraging, you're not supportive. You're critical, you're always putting me down."
"Examples, Emily. I need specific examples."
God, Mum, it's hard to give specific examples.
"Well, try, Emily."
"The house I moved into? You weren't supportive about that," she said a little desperately.
"The place was a dump, only fit for vermin. Surely I'm entitled to my own opinion."
"Of course you are. But it was my choice to move there. Can't you see how criticising my choices isn't very supportive?"
"Am I such a bad mother for wanting better for my daughter? Now you're just sounding like a petulant child, Emily. I came here to find out why you think I've wronged you so badly that you would threaten to not let me see my grandchild."
"Mum, it's more about the way you behave towards me," Emily said, tears of frustration filling her eyes.
"How am I supposed to be a better mother if you can't tell me what I do that upsets you so much?"
Emily wanted to beat her head against the table. This was just going around in circles. Enid would never see it. There wasn't an actual example she could cite without her turning it around to suit herself. You can't explain feelings.
"You said I don't encourage you enough. I'm sure if I did, you would be complaining I push you too hard. I can't win either way. It's the curse of motherhood. You'll see what it's like yourself soon enough, Emily. You're a well-adjusted, intelligent young woman, so I clearly didn't do too bad a job."
"Then why are you so hard on me?"
"I wasn't aware that I was. Perhaps I'm not as warm and demonstrative as you would like, but that does not make me a bad mother."
"Do you know how awful it feels to always have your mother looking you up and down critically? To never feel good enough in her eyes, to never measure up?"
Enid's mouth dropped open and she stared at Emily.
"I do not."
"You do, actually. All the time. And it makes me feel terrible."
"Well, I certainly don't mean to. I think you're beautiful. Of course I do. You're my daughter. If anything, I'm a little envious of your lovely curves. I would have liked a bit more up top. And your complexion is so much better than mine. I wish I could get away without wearing makeup."
So maybe Barbara was right when she said Enid was threatened by her.
"And of course I'm proud of your achievements. Look at the way you got through John's funeral and moving back here. And you're about to start a business."
"But you said it was a silly idea."
"Well, maybe I was a little hasty. I thought you were taking on too much too soon with the farm and Jake and everything. And perhaps I was seeing it through my eyes. You're much younger and more energetic than me. If I'm being completely honest, and it seems I am," she said with a sad smile, "I'm probably a little overawed by your strength. Look at how well you've dealt with all the terrible things life has thrown you lately."
A fine way to show it. But Emily kept her thoughts to herself. This was hard for her mother. She knew that. Enid really couldn't see how she'd hurt her, but maybe it was time for a truce. She'd just have to accept Enid for the way she was. "Thanks, Mum," she said with a faint smile.
"Now, you two. Hug,"
Des said.
"Properly."
Emily and Enid both glared at him. Enid really didn't do hugging.
"I insist. We're not leaving until you do."
Emily got up, walked around the table, and opened her arms out wide. Enid stood up and embraced her, tentatively at first. And then she clutched on hard. Emily wrapped her arms around her mother. When was the last time they had hugged properly like this? Had they ever? Suddenly she felt Enid's shoulders begin to shake. Oh my God, she's crying. "I'm so sorry I've been a cold, critical mother. I know I have. I didn't want to admit it, but I have been a bully, Emily. I've been trying to hide my own fears and insecurities by being cruel to you. Please forgive me, and please don't take my grandchild away." She sniffed. "It's okay, Mum," Emily said, hugging her even tighter. She found herself rubbing her mother's back, soothing her. "I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that, in front of Dad and Jake." She felt bad about humiliating them and was glad to have apologized for it. It was just a pity Jake hadn't been there to hear it. If only he hadn't gone off in a huff. So much for good communication. Finally, Enid broke away. Emily was shocked to see just how broken she seemed. Her mother, the woman with the hard, brittle exterior that never wavered, looked absolutely shattered. She'd aged 20 years in the last 2 minutes, but somehow she'd never looked more beautiful. The lines down her face and the coldness in her eyes had softened. She grasped Emily's hands in both of hers. "I want you to know that I love you, and I am proud of you. I always have been. You'll be a wonderful businesswoman and mother, and if you'll let me, I'd like to be there for you and Jake and the baby." Emily could only nod and try to swallow back the tears. Des smiled at them. Emily almost erupted again at seeing tears in his eyes and streaks down his cheeks. He held out the tissue box that usually lived at the far end of the table. Enid silently plucked a tissue from the box, and then Emily did. "Thanks, Dad." They sat back down. Emily felt exhausted, but leapt up when the timer on the oven sounded. "Who's for a slice of warm apple tea cake?" Chapter 40. Jake still hadn't arrived home when her parents left. It was now mid-afternoon, and Emily was concerned. She wished he'd been there to see how well everything had turned out. She wasn't sure how she was going to convince him of what had gone on. She had invited them to stay for lunch, but Enid had said she had cold meat in the fridge that had to be used that day. In the end, they had hugged goodbye. It seemed her mother now did hugging. She had just finished forming a batch of raw rissoles on a tray and slid it into the fridge for cooking later when she heard a car drive in. She started running through what she was going to say in her head, but she was in for a surprise.
"Hi, honey, I'm home,"
came the voice from the back door. Emily turned to see Jake enter the kitchen with a bunch of multicoloured roses, their stems held together with aluminium foil. She raised her eyebrows. He handed the roses over with a sheepish look. She was about to speak when he put a forefinger over her lips.
"Me first. I'm sorry," he said. "I was wrong. You have every right to speak your mind and defend yourself against your mother."
"Thank you," Emily said, almost lost for words. "But you were right.
Not about what I said, I still stand by every word, but about the way I did it. I shouldn't have put you in that position. I'm sorry.
They drew each other into an embrace, and Emily found herself sobbing again.
Oh, God, Jake, I thought I was going to lose you. Let's never fight like that again.
He kissed her deeply and then looked into her eyes. I love you, Emily Oliphant. When he let her go, Emily sniffed the flowers, drawing in the gorgeous, heady mix of musky, spicy, and sweet rose scents.
Where did these come from? Don't tell me you've been off sweet-talking the old ladies in town.
No. I went to see Barbara and David. He sat down at the table. Something smells good.
Raw onion and garlic? I've made rissoles for dinner. There's some apple tea cake if you fancy.
That would be great. I haven't had lunch.
Here you are, help yourself. I've already had some, Emily said, putting the open Tupperware container, a knife, and a plate in front of him.
So I see, he said. Just having cake won't be good for the baby.
Don't worry, Mum and Dad helped with the cake.
Oh? He asked, raising his eyebrows.
Not so fast, mister. I want to know why you've had a sudden change of opinion.
Well, I hope you don't mind me talking to Barbara and David, but I didn't know where else to go.
How are they?
They're doing well. They reiterated that they're happy for us and said they'll be the best aunt and uncle our little one could imagine.
That's great. We're so lucky to have them as friends.
That we are.
And what did they have to say about the, Emily Enid situation?
Barbara told me some of the awful things she's heard Enid say to you. Honestly, I had no idea just how damaging she's been. I'm so sorry you've had to put up with that. And I'm really sorry for not supporting you. I see now how hard it's been for you to stand up for yourself. I feel awful that I let you down. Will you forgive me?
Of course I forgive you, Jake. I love you, she said, suddenly choking up. We're going to be great parents together, she said, getting up and wrapping her arms around him from behind as he sat at the table and kissing his neck.
So, what did I miss?
The following morning, after another lie-in for Emily, Jake came home from the post office with the box of invitations. He handed the package to Emily, who tore off the sticky tape with the glee of a child unwrapping a Christmas present. They grinned at each other as she carefully slid one out. She almost gasped at seeing her vision depicted there on the card in front of her. Everything about it was stunning. She loved how the thickness of the card felt in her hand. It was so professional-looking and smelling. She took a deep whiff. Jake raised his eyebrows at her.
What are you doing?
They smell so professional, yummy.
Jake laughed. Darling, they are professional. Here, let me see.
They're absolutely perfect, she said with a sigh, and handed it over. I can't believe how well Simone's art came out. Emily and then Jake turned it over and around, carefully looking for any errors, and finally agreed they were free of typos. It was a cold, wet day, perfect for staying inside and enveloping and addressing the 250 invitations. They had just laid everything out on the table to operate a production line when they heard the whoosh of car tyres on wet earth outside. Jack got up to investigate. Emily could hear David and Barbara's voices. "This looks like fun," Barbara said as she came into the kitchen, followed by Sasha and Grace. Jake and David had paused in the closed veranda. "Are those the invitations? How exciting!" "You're just in time to help," Emily said, hugging her friend. "Is everything okay with Jake again?" Barbara whispered into her hair. "Thanks to you," Emily whispered back, giving Barbara an extra tight squeeze. "I hope we didn't overstep the mark discussing it with him, but he—" "No, never. Not at all. I understand." "And what about Enid?" "You know, I think we might have turned a corner. She actually apologized to me." "Really?" "Yep. Really. It was good to get things out in the open. We'll see how long it lasts, but at least she seems to know the score now.
That's amazing.
I know. So how are you guys doing? I think about you every moment of every day.
Thanks. We're taking it one step at a time. We'll get there.
Sit,
she said, pulling out a chair for Barbara.
I was only kidding about putting you to work. I'll just move these out of the way.
She started bundling everything up again.
We're happy to help.
What am I being roped in for? David asked, coming in and hugging Emily.
We'll help them stuff the envelopes, label and stamp the invitations to the gallery opening, won't we?
Of course,
David said, sitting down.
That's lovely of you, but not before you've had a cuppa.
Don't mind our dog making herself at home, Barbara said with a laugh, nodding at where Sasha and Grace had curled up together against the wall.
They only have themselves to blame for turning her into a house pet, David said.
She's beautiful. We loved having her here, as did Grace,
Emily said. She's been such a comfort, you've no idea. Emily smiled and nodded knowingly. She almost shivered at the memory of that first night in the baker's old, empty house after she'd left John. She'd been terrified. If it hadn't been for Grace, she might have seriously contemplated giving in and going back to him.
They look great,
David said, picking up an invitation from the top of the pile.
Thanks, we're really happy with them,
Jake said.
How many are you sending?
250. Basically everyone we could think of.
Wow,
David said.
The rule of thumb is you end up with around 1/3 attending. And since we're so far out in the sticks and lots of them are in Melbourne...
Though we are putting an ad in the paper so no one feels left out,
Emily cut in.
Sounds good,
David said.
Who's doing the catering?
Barbara asked.
I've been meaning to speak to you about that. I thought you might like the fundraising opportunity for the CWA. There's no pressure, though. If you're not feeling up to cooking, that's fine. Or you could run it and delegate. Or not be involved at all. It's entirely up to you. I just wondered if you might want something to...
I'd love to do it, Barbara said.
Don't decide straight away. Take some time to think it through. There's always the bakery if it gets all too hard and the CWA can't or don't want to do it.
Darling, we've spoken about this, David said quietly, putting his hand over his wife's. You can't be putting a Band-Aid over everything by making yourself so busy you can't think about it. You heard the counsellor. You have to be kind to yourself. Now might not be the right time, he added softly. At least let me think about it. It's over a month away and I'm getting better every day. Soon I'll probably be climbing the walls for something to do. And I do so love cooking.
And you're so very good at it. But please don't feel pressured,
Emily said. I won't.
Promise?
I promise. I'll let you know in the next few days. As they settled down with their hot drinks, Emily watched Barbara. She could practically see her brain churning with ideas for canapes, and she was suddenly looking more determined. It was good to see some animation back in her friend who had given her so much. So, Barbara said an hour or so later when they were busy enveloping and stamping, you haven't told us when the little one is due. Jake got the results of your blood tests the other day, didn't he? Emily nodded. And? Emily wasn't avoiding telling them, she was trying not to crack up laughing.
Lucky you're sitting down,
she said. Why? When is it?
Christmas Day?
Barbara laughed out loud. That's hilarious!
Quite the gift for someone who doesn't do Christmas,
David said, laughing.
Nor do the Lonigans, really. It's terribly ironic,
Jake said. Ha ha, even better. Oh, this is too funny. I tell you what, I'll let you off tinsel duty if you're in labour.
Oh, you're so generous. But the poor kid having that date.
Well, Missy, you shouldn't have been so anti-Christmas. It's a sign.
Everything's a bloody sign, according to you. The problem is figuring out what the sign is a sign of.
Sometimes these things are simply sent to entertain the rest of us,
"This is just priceless," Barbara said, chuckling and shaking her head as she placed a stamp on an envelope and gave it a thump with her fist. "Now this is more like old times," Emily thought. A few days later, Barbara rang to say she would be honoured to do the food for the launch on behalf of the CWA. She had already spoken to Thora Stratton, who was also thrilled to be involved. And Emily wouldn't have to hire glasses because between the Bowls Club and CWA, they'd be able to secure plenty.
"I know this sounds way out of the box," Emily ventured. "But what about including Enid? I know she'd love to be involved."
"Great idea. Thora will keep her in line if necessary. Let me call her. I'll get back to you in a week or so with a menu."
"Thanks so much, Barbara. It means a lot to have you doing this."
"You're paying, don't forget."
"Of course I won't forget. But I'm just so glad to have my best friend taking care of something so important."
"Hold your applause until the actual night, Em. It could all go pear-shaped yet."
"Yeah, right. As if. Don't forget there's a huge oven and plenty of bench and fridge space at the gallery if you'd rather do the cooking there." "Thanks, I'll bear that in mind." "Well, I'd better go and get my committee together. I feel a bout of bossiness coming on." "Don't let me hold you up." Emily laughed and hung up. It was so good to hear her friend so upbeat again. "This is all coming together so well, little one," she told her belly. She still wasn't all gooey and doe-eyed about her pregnancy, but she was intensely grateful to the little guy or girl growing inside of her for providing the impetus to sort things out with Enid. And she regularly rubbed her belly and said thank you. She was looking forward to seeing the little bean on an ultrasound one day soon. They had decided to wait until after the opening so they weren't distracted. Meanwhile, they were still trying to decide if they wanted to know the sex of their baby or be surprised. They seemed to change their minds daily. Emily could imagine plenty of women in the district not bothering with some of the tests and scans, given all the travelling one had to do to either Port Lincoln or Whyalla. From the little she'd learnt so far, it was already clear that pregnancy treatment and birth services in the country were very different to those in the city. Jake had initially been horrified that there were no obstetric or ultrasound services in Wattle Creek or the neighbouring towns. It had been Emily's turn to reassure him that everything would be fine. There was the St. John ambulance and the Royal Flying Doctor Service if anything did go wrong. She had been feeling much calmer since she and Enid had sorted things out, and was determined to let nature take its course and be guided by the doctor in Hope Springs. She'd quizzed Enid and discovered she'd had a smooth labour that hadn't been overly long, though to Emily 8 hours sounded an awfully long time to be in enormous pain. But Enid had assured her it was a different, fulfilling sort of pain. Well, she'd have to take her word for it for now. They had the impending birth of their business to deal with first. Chapter 41. Time seemed to speed up, and the next few weeks passed in a blur of preparations, invitations, RSVPs, and last-minute arrangements. Suddenly it was the eve of the opening, and Emily was cleaning the house in preparation for Simone's arrival. She, Barbara, and Thora had spent a day the week before choosing a suitable selection of hot and cold and sweet and savoury finger food, and everything was underway. All the women were getting along well. Even Enid was playing nicely. When Emily had visited her parents to deliver personal copies of the invitation, Enid had asked whether it was okay if she put the word around Hope Springs and encouraged people to come along. Emily had laughed. "Of course, Mum, the more the merrier. There's an advert in the paper, remember?" But she'd been really touched by how respectful Enid was being towards her these days. It certainly made for a much more harmonious relationship. She had been surprised to receive an RSVP from her cousin Liz to say she was coming and bringing along her parents. She was even more surprised to receive an engagement gift in the mail, a gorgeous pewter photo frame. She was now really looking forward to seeing her again. They'd had a lovely chat when Emily had rung to thank her, and both had admitted to overstepping the mark during their last phone call. Afterwards, Emily had wondered if her relationship with her mother had also negatively influenced her feelings towards her cousin.
For a while she had been quite angry towards all of her family, other than her dad. But Liz had been really supportive that day at Gran's funeral and very generous to offer her somewhere to stay if she ever left John. Aunt Peggy, Uncle Jim and Liz were staying with Enid and Des. They were arriving today as well and would no doubt be put to work on the food. Enid had assured Emily she wasn't expected to come down and help entertain them when she was so busy. That was a turn-up for the books and a great relief. While vacuuming her bedroom, Emily paused beside the button jar on the tall boy and looked out the window towards the cottage.
So much has changed, Gran. You just wouldn't believe it.
She turned and smiled at the two signs that David and Jake had put up just inside the paddock, one for the gallery and one to advertise Jake's business. They really had made a wonderful partnership.
And a wonderful family, Gracie,
she said aloud, bending down to rub the ears of the dog whose tail had just slapped her leg.
Soon an even bigger family, too,
she added, rubbing her belly. Thanks to Jake's constant reassuring, she was feeling much better about the baby, the cottage, everything. She was so lucky to have found him.
Too late to back out now,
he had said yesterday, after unveiling the signs. He'd been grinning broadly and had wrapped his arms around her.
It's hard to believe it's really happening.
She was still astounded at how much they'd got done in such a short space of time, and how much had happened in less than a year. If only Gran was here to see all this. When she thought about how much she missed the old lady, she physically ached. At least now the tears had stopped.
Gran wouldn't want us moping,
she told herself, Grace, and baby Bean as she stamped on the vacuum cleaner and it roared to life. After she finished the house, she would do the cottage. It probably should have been left until the morning, but she was keeping a lid on her emotions by keeping herself busy. She'd probably do it again then, too. She was also nervous and excited about finally seeing all of Simone's paintings in the flesh. Jake's sister had been hard at work since Easter and had been sending regular updates with photos attached. Each was stunning, and Emily loved that she was tackling different subjects. She was confident there would be something to appeal to everyone who attended the exhibition. She checked her watch. Jake had gone to town to check the mail and stock up on groceries. He seemed to have happily taken over this particular job, and she had no objections. Thanks to the build and the time he'd spent helping David, he had become friendly with loads of people and enjoyed stopping in the street to chat when he had the time. But hopefully he wouldn't be long today. Simone was due in less than an hour. She packed up the vacuum cleaner and stowed it in the cupboard in Jake's office. At Jake's suggestion, they'd got a second machine for the cottage. Better to have the place self-contained right from the start than be dragging things back and forth, he'd said. They had decided Emily would just open on the weekends and see how that went for a start. They hadn't put opening hours on the sign, but a smaller panel swung beneath the main sign to state whether the gallery was open or closed. Jake's graphic designer had organised the website and Jake had done a Facebook page, so people could check without driving past. They had also included details about being open by appointment and her phone number. Neither of them thought it would be a problem. It wasn't like they were ever too far away, and it seemed the usual thing to do. Emily had to take Jake's word for that. She knew diddly squat about running a gallery, as she seemed to be reminded on a daily basis. But she was learning. When they had gone over the final figures, Emily was delighted to see the project had come in $20,000 under budget. She couldn't understand why Jake wasn't more exuberant until he pointed out that the spare $20,000 was for landscaping, which they hadn't done yet. So it had actually come in right on budget. Emily thought that was pretty good, considering all the stories she'd heard of people's budgets blowing out. She wiped the bathroom vanity one last time and re-straightened the already straight towels. She was starting to get a little jittery. Back in the kitchen, she'd just boiled the kettle in a last-ditch effort to keep herself occupied when she heard the toot-toot of an unfamiliar car horn. Here she is. Perfect timing, she thought, as she heard another vehicle turning in behind it. Outside, she found Simone stepping out of a white two-door ute with a fiberglass canopy. JKR and Associates was emblazoned on the side. They hugged like best friends.
I can't believe how fresh you look after driving all the way from Adelaide, Emily said. I'm so glad I did a stopover. It is a long way from Melbourne by road, but worth it to know the paintings would arrive safe and sound.
Jake appeared beside them and hugged his sister. Good trip? He asked.
Not bad. I actually don't mind the ute, Simone said. Wow, how many have you brought? Emily asked, peering through the tinted windows of the canopy where all she could see was bubble wrap. The whole back area looked chock-a-block full of paintings. They'd offered to have them freighted over, but Simone had been adamant about bringing them herself. Heaps. I've been a busy beaver. You must be exhausted, Emily said. I'm not feeling too bad, actually, though I can't say I won't crash later, Simone said with a smile. But not until I've seen this gorgeous building of yours. I'll need your help to decide where to hang what.
I hope you came prepared to work, sis, Jake said.
Phew! And I thought I'd already done the hard work. Can I have a cup of tea first? You sure can, Emily said, leading her up the path.
I'll get your bags, Jake said, and retrieved a large duffel-style overnight bag and long black garment bag from the passenger side. Emily thought she noticed him share a conspiratorial look with Simone.
God, this weighs a ton, he joked, pretending to struggle under the weight of the luggage. We really don't need any more rocks or bricks, he added with a laugh.
Oh, ha, Simone said, slapping at her brother's arm. Back inside, Emily boiled the kettle again and got out some homemade melting moment biscuits while Jake showed Simone to her room. She smiled at hearing Simone cry out in delight. They had finally put bookcases in and finished her reading nook. When she and Barbara had gone down to pick up the mantelpieces, they'd had them restored after all, Maureen had asked if Emily had found bookshelves because a lovely pair had just come in. And they were. Just perfect. Just when she was starting to wonder what was taking them so long, they reappeared. Again, she had the feeling they were sharing a secret. They were chattering in the hall, but suddenly seemed to change the subject when they entered the kitchen.
The shelves look great. They really complete the room. Thanks. If only I had more time to spend in there. Now, you've had lunch, haven't you? Emily asked, pouring the tea. I'm happy to make you a sandwich if you haven't. I'm fine, thanks, Simone said. I stopped at Hungry Jack's in Port Augusta. Naughty, I know, but just what I crave on a road trip.
Emily nodded. She didn't think she'd ever driven to or from Adelaide without stopping for a burger in Port Augusta.
This is the end of CD 9. The book continues on CD 10.